Chapter 2029 Wang Ting, you set me up again. 2. This guy might do it. Dong Lei felt a bit awkward. She originally intended to help Wang Ting, but things had taken a strange turn, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. With a stern expression, Wang Ting scanned the surroundings with his spiritual power, collecting the attribute bubbles dropped by the few individuals earlier. Constellation Metal Force, 4380050,000, Cosmos Stage 5th level, Constellation Wood Force, 2670040,000, Cosmos Stage 4th level, Constellation Water Force, 3650040,000, Cosmos Stage 4th level, Constellation Fire Force, 2160,000, Cosmos Stage 6th level, B0XO. Constellation Earth Force, 3250040,000, Cosmos Stage 4th level. After a round of absorption, all his 5 basic forces rose. His Constellation Fire Force also rose by a level, from the 5th level to the 6th level. The frustrating feelings vanished in an instant, and Wang Ting was elated. His Constellation Fire Force was advancing rapidly. The sensation of quickly enhancing his strength was truly exhilarating. Besides the Constellation Poison Force, Wang Ting's Constellation Fire Force rose the fastest. Among the 5 elements, the other attributes rose too. They were at least at the 4th level. Harvesting the attributes bubbles from Heaven Stage martial warriors was indeed satisfying. Then, there was the rise in his domains. Unfortunately, most people's 5-element domains weren't as good as Wang Ting's. Only Guang Yu's earth and metal domains were passable. Earth domain, 2606,000, 6th rank, metal domain, 3106,000, 6th rank, both domains had improved significantly, which enhanced Wang Ting's comprehension of both. However, what truly caught Wang Ting's attention was the attribute bubble of the mighty Titan palm. He closed his eyes, and an image appeared in his mind. A highly powerful palm technique was slowly executed by the human image. Suddenly, the image leaped into the air, and a golden palm print descended from the heavens. Boom! A massive palm print appeared on the ground, almost embedded in the earth. When viewed from the sky, it looked spectacular. This mighty Titan palm is amazing. Wang Ting opened his eyes and couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. This palm technique was truly exceptional, combining both earth and metal elements to create a powerful combat skill. Furthermore, it was an eternal stage battle technique, making it a rare acquisition. During the battle, when Guang Yu had been using this technique vigorously, he dropped 4,500 points of attributes, all of which were now gains for Wang Ting. Mighty Titan Palm, Eternal Stage 4,505,000, Foundation, 4,500 points of attributes, and it can't even reach the proficient level. Wang Ting observed his attributes board with some surprise. It seemed that mastering this palm technique was quite challenging. Wang Ting shook his head, thinking about how to obtain more advantages from Guang Yu, as his attribute points were still insufficient. In addition to the attributes of this palm technique, Guang Yu also dropped the Strength of Ultima attribute. Guang Yu's mastery of the Strength of Ultima was undoubtedly much higher than Wang Ting's, reaching the 10th level. Wang Ting had gained a huge advantage. Strength of Ultima, 3110,000, 10th level. Wang Ting's mind was engulfed with insights, causing his understanding of the Strength of Ultima to make a significant leap from the 6th level to the 10th level. Excellent! Wang Ting's eyes gleamed with joy, and he couldn't hide his excitement. Threads of arcane power wrapped around his fist. He made no unnecessary movements, just clenched his fist, and the surrounding space seemed to be under pressure. Now, if Wang Ting were to use the mighty Titan palm, its power might not be significantly weaker than Guang Yu's. The only shortcomings were that his force was not as profound as Guang Yu's, and his proficiency was somewhat lacking. But Wang Ting could compensate for both of these shortcomings. If the force wasn't enough, he could use his domain. If the proficiency wasn't enough, he would add more attributes. Moreover, he had the ancient god's body and the true dragon battle physique. With these two physiques, he could compete head-to-head even with Heaven Stage martial warriors. If he had a confrontation with Guang Yu, he could use this mighty Titan palm to see who was stronger. The team led by Wn Dong, who was quite close by, immediately noticed something unusual and turned their gaze toward Wang Teng, showing surprise on their faces. Did he achieve a breakthrough? They couldn't help but feel that Wang Ting had become substantially stronger in this short period. His talent was beyond extraordinary. The members exchanged glances, wearing diverse expressions, and couldn't help but sigh in amazement. There was a reason why he was so powerful even though he was only at the Cosmos stage. While they were still in a daze, he had already made a breakthrough. How could they possibly compare? It was incomparable. All right, everyone, let's continue forward. Wang Ting waved his hand to dispel the spiritual maze and spoke calmly. The team looked around and found that everything had returned to its original state. The ancient architectural complex was still the same with a sense of age and undiscovered dangers. They couldn't help but admire the extraordinary abilities of a divine spirit master. They were a little envious. Divine spirit masters were rare even in the universe. They hadn't expected Wang Ting, with his remarkable martial talent, to have such strong spiritual abilities as well. Wang Ting continued moving forward. In contrast to the others who had gained nothing so far, he had a great harvest already. His good fortune had put him in high spirits, and he was eager to explore the ancient architectural complex. On the other hand, Wan Dong's team appeared somewhat dejected. Wang Ting gave them a huge blow, and they knew that it was difficult to escape his clutches. Guang Yu and his team also followed behind, but they had learned their lesson. They didn't rush ahead this time. They kept their distance, fearing another trap set by Wang Ting. Chapter 2030 Wang Ting, you set me up again. 3. Damba and Rao Ying weren't dead. However, they were seriously injured and were unconscious. Having lost 2 Heaven Stage martial warriors and still bearing traces of shadow power within their bodies, which they couldn't expel, their combat capabilities were significantly diminished. With this level of power, they were no match for Wang Teng and his group. However, they were not willing to leave without a fight. The ancient architectural complex surely held immense benefits, and everyone desired to claim them. As long as there was a glimmer of opportunity, they couldn't afford to give up. Although Wang Teng's team seemed to have the upper hand, it didn't guarantee that they wouldn't make mistakes. B0XO. Com Guang Yu seemed to have realized this and had a sly smile on his face. The information he had shared with Wang Ting wasn't entirely accurate. If Wang Ting took it at face value, he was bound to face losses, and Guang Yu intended to reclaim everything and more when the time was right. As they continued moving forward, surprisingly, they encountered no further dangers, and the mysterious black shadow didn't reappear. After journeying for what felt like an eternity, they crossed vast stretches of the ancient architectural landscape, each majestic structure crumbling and dissolving into the annals of time, leaving nothing but dust to mark their existence. Suddenly, Wang Ting halted in his tracks, his gaze fixed on a particular spot in the distance. His pupils constricted slightly. Gasp! Wan Dong and his companions were equally startled when they saw it and gasped in shock, their faces turned ashen. On the other side, separated by some distance but with keen eyes, Guang Yu and his team also observed the situation. They hesitated, not getting closer, keeping their distance. A corpse. A body pinned to the stone wall. It was a man with a towering stature, at least 7 to 8 meters tall, and he had a gigantic, razor-sharp golden horn protruding from the top of his head. Giant Horn Race Martial Warrior. Wang Ting recognized this race. This was a martial warrior from the Giant Horn Race, known for their formidable affinity with the metal element. Judging by the patterns on his horn, he was at least a universe stage martial warrior, yet he met a violent death here. Wang Ting whispered. What truly sent shivers down their spines was the manner of death for this Giant Horn Race martial warrior. His internal organs, his very core, even the center of his brows, had all been perforated. His body was riddled with dark metallic rods of an unknown composition, with dried black bloodstains all around. This scene was undeniably eerie and unsettling. It should have been a one-strike kill, Wang Ting said. The others paused and looked more closely, asking, "How do you know that?" "Look at his wounds," Wang Ting explained grimly, "there are no signs of struggle. It appears his mind and internal organs were pierced simultaneously, indicating an incredible level of control." The group's faces turned even more somber. Is this the work of a divine spirit master? Wn Dong hesitated before asking. It's not certain, Wang Teng replied with a thoughtful look. Take a look at this wall, said Dong Lei suddenly. It's quite peculiar. The other walls have crumbled under the ravages of time, turning to dust upon contact. Yet this barrier stands here seemingly untouched by time's decay. She was referring to the barrier behind the body. Given the weight of the body, the wall should have turned to dust a long time ago, but it still stood, which was quite astonishing. That is strange indeed. I'll go take a look. Gikdor offered and cautiously moved forward. At this point, they were still several hundred meters away from the body. Wang Teng had already stopped to avoid getting too close in case of unexpected events. As Gikdor started to walk closer, Wang Teng pulled him back. Gikdor looked at Wang Teng curiously. Without explaining further, Wang Teng turned back and called out to Guang Yu and the others, "Senior Guang Yu, there's a corpse here. Would you like to take a look?" The expressions of the onlookers turned peculiar as if they had caught a whiff of something familiar. On the other side, Guang Yu's expression turned suspicious, his voice cold. "No need. We've already seen it." Seeing that they didn't come over, Wang Ting's eyes darted around, and he added, "It seems this corpse has a space ring on its hand. Finders keepers, right? Come on, everyone, let's share the spoils." Wn Dong and the others were stunned. They turned their heads abruptly and finally noticed the space ring on the corpse's hand. In general, after defeating an opponent, martial warriors would typically claim any spoils, especially conspicuous items like space equipment, rather than leaving them behind for others. That was why Wn Dong and the others didn't even look at it. After Wang Ting's reminder, they finally realized that the space ring was still there. For a moment, the eyes of the group members all revealed a burning desire. It was a space ring left behind by a universe stage martial warrior. What could be inside it? Guang Yu and his team were initially quite resolute, refusing to come over. However, as soon as they heard about the space ring, they started to have other thoughts. Why don't I take a look? Guang Yu persuaded himself in his heart. Just a look. He would act according to the circumstances and retreat the moment something went wrong. He wouldn't fall into Wang Teng's trap. He wasn't stupid. A universe stage martial warrior space ring was tempting, but he needed to stay alive to enjoy the spoils. He glanced at his remaining 4 teammates and saw that they were all eager. This made his determination waver a bit further. "Leader?" Ran Qian asked. "Come, let's take a look," Guang Yu whispered. "Okay." Ran Qian and the others' eyes lit up. Why did they come out for the mission? Wasn't it for these things? The space equipment left behind by a universe stage martial warrior was simply too tempting. Even though they all knew that Wang Teng certainly wasn't that kind-hearted, they couldn't resist the temptation. A group of people quickly arrived beside Wang Teng and his teammates. "How do you want to split it?" Guang Yu first glanced at the space ring on the finger of the giant horn race martial warrior to ensure its authenticity. Then he looked at Wang Teng and asked. Chapter 2031 Wang Ting, you set me up again. Whoever gets it, it's theirs. What do you think? Wang Ting said. You didn't say that a moment ago. Guang Yu frowned with a cold smirk in his heart, thinking that this guy had ulterior motives. Everyone has a chance to compete for it, but whether you can get it depends on your skills, right? Wang Ting said nonchalantly. Wn Dong and the others had uncertain expressions. Although they didn't want Guang Yu and his group to get involved, it seemed like Wang Ting had a plan, so they didn't say much. Guang Yu furrowed his brows tightly, feeling that Wang Ting was definitely scheming something against him. But he couldn't figure out what it was, so he felt quite helpless. What do you say? Are you going to make a move? Give me an answer, Wang Ting asked. We can make a move, but it has to be simultaneously, Guang Yu said. B0XO. Okay, Wang Ting nodded. On our side, I'll make the move. Guang Yu glanced at Wn Dong and the others. By now, he had realized that these heaven stage martial warriors were actually under Wang Teng's leadership. They had been acting in concert with him from the beginning. At the mere thought of this, he felt a twinge of unease. A team formed by a bunch of Heaven Stage martial warriors was led by a Cosmos Stage martial warrior. Who would believe it? So even though he had felt something peculiar about this team earlier, he didn't dwell on it. Since you're making the move alone, we won't take advantage of the situation. I'll also make the move personally on my side, just to avoid others accusing me of bullying you, Guang Yu said. Good, I admire your straightforwardness, Wang Ting nodded. Guang Yu eyed Wang Ting suspiciously, having reason to believe that Wang Ting wasn't actually praising him. Both of them prepared, exchanged a glance, and then headed towards the giant horn race martial warrior. The members of both teams kept their eyes fixed on the backs of these two. After walking about 100 meters, they entered the 300-meter range of the giant horn race martial warrior's corpse. Guang Yu's expression suddenly changed, and he swiftly moved to his left. Swoosh! A seemingly invisible attack abruptly pierced through the right side of Guang Yu's eye and disappeared into thin air. Guang Yu's pupils contracted, and cold sweat immediately formed on his forehead. If he hadn't dodged in time, his right eye would have been pierced. What's that? Guang Yu's heart trembled, feeling as if he had just walked through the gates of death. Heaven Stage martial warriors had considerable strength, but facing such an eerie attack, he felt closer to death than ever before. He didn't see what that thing was. It appeared to be a faint shadowy attack that melded into the void, making it almost impossible to see with the naked eye. Far away, people like Ran Qian had not seen what happened. They only saw Guang Yu suddenly move sideways with a terrified expression, which left them all puzzled. Was there some danger? They speculated in their minds, scanning their surroundings with a serious expression. It was precisely because they hadn't seen anything that they felt even more uneasy. Guang Yu, what's wrong? Wang Ting's voice came from not far away. Guang Yu looked in that direction and was taken aback because Wang Ting was approaching the martial warrior's corpse step by step, seemingly unaffected by any attack. How was that possible? Senior Guang Yu, if you don't hurry up, I'm taking this ring. Wang Ting's voice slowly reached him. Guang Yu's facial muscles twitched. This guy was trying to provoke him. Senior Guang Yu, come on, are you afraid? Wang Ting walked and smiled at Guang Yu. Guang Yu's eyes flickered as he watched Wang Ting as if trying to figure out how he had avoided the shadowy attack. Unfortunately, after a moment, he realized that he couldn't discern anything and could only take a deep breath and continue moving forward. Swoosh! After taking just a few steps, the shadowy attacks reappeared, shooting at him from extremely tricky angles. This time, Guang Yu was prepared and immediately dodged the first attack. However, the second and third shadowy attacks followed suit, leaving him struggling to cope and causing cold sweat to break out all over his body. But strangely, Ran Qian, Wn Dong, and the others in the distance couldn't see anything at all. They watched Guang Yu shifting left and right, appearing as if he was dancing. What's going on? The group exchanged puzzled looks, and a strange atmosphere hung in the air amidst the tension. Guang Yu had no idea that people outside couldn't see the shadows at all. He was fully focused on dealing with those shadowy attacks that kept rushing toward him, looking extremely serious. He didn't choose to give up. If Wang Ting, a Cosmos Stage martial warrior, hadn't retreated, how could he? Besides, Senior Guang Yu, hurry up. Why are you so slow? Wang Ting's voice kept coming, making him feel a bit defiant. He knew Wang Ting was trying to provoke him, but he couldn't swallow his pride. Of course, the main reason was that he believed he could handle it, so he had no intention of giving up. Seeing this, Wang Ting chuckled and deliberately slowed down his pace, occasionally evading to the right and left as if he was having a hard time. On his side, the appearance of the shadowy attacks was no different. But he could handle them. This shadowy assault was the condensation of shadow power, creating a special field within this small area. With his shadow talent, he could sense the shadowy attacks before they happened. While it was a deadly danger to others, it was just a minor challenge for Wang Ting. His goal was to lead Guang Yu deeper into this field. I wonder if there are attribute bubbles? Wang Ting wondered to himself as he dodged the shadowy attacks. I thought you were so capable, but now you're struggling just like me. Guang Yu couldn't help but taunt as he noticed Wang Ting's struggle. Chapter 2032 Wang Ting, you set me up again. 5. But I'm still faster than you. You can't catch up with me. Wang Teng chuckled. Guang Yu. Why was he so irritating? Suddenly, Wang Teng's eyes lit up as he spotted an attribute bubble emerging. He momentarily disregarded Guang Yu and used his spiritual power to snatch it up. Shadow Domain * 100 Shadow Domain. There's indeed a related domain attribute. Wang Teng's heart filled with joy as his suspicions proved true. With this discovery, he became even more patient, slowly moving forward and waiting for more attribute bubbles to appear. B0XO. After some time, 2 more attribute bubbles appeared on the left. Shadow Domain * 200 Shadow Domain * 150 Good. Good. Keep them coming. Wang Teng was delighted. He was enjoying this unexpected gain. Did this guy just smile? Guang Yu was filled with doubt. Swoosh. When he was distracted, 3 shadowy attacks shot from different angles. Guang Yu's expression changed drastically. He swiftly sidestepped, narrowly avoiding 2 of the shadowy attacks, then crouched to evade the third. Before he could get back up, 4 more shadowy attacks came from all directions. Damn! Why did their numbers suddenly increase like this? Guang Yu couldn't help but curse in frustration. The number of shadowy attacks had instantly multiplied several times, catching him completely off guard. Senior, are you sure you can handle this? If not, it's not embarrassing to withdraw early. Wang Teng's voice came at the right moment. You're the one who can't handle it. Your whole family can't do it. Guang Yu's face turned red. He avoided the incoming shadowy attacks, cursed at Wang Teng, and then, gritting his teeth, charged forward. 10 meters. However, after only rushing about 10 meters, the shadowy attacks around him surged once again, densely and rapidly closing in from all directions, almost enveloping him entirely. Guang Yu's expression completely changed. How could he dodge this multitude of shadowy attacks? Without thinking, he attempted to retreat, but it was too late. Countless shadowy attacks were rushing toward him from behind as well. Guang Yu desperately tried to evade, but he was grazed by several shadowy attacks, causing blood to spurt from his wounds. Fortunately, he managed to stay alive. But at that very moment, a sinister force immediately penetrated his body through the wound. The same power as the Black Shadow. Guang Yu's expression changed slightly. He tried to expel it but to no avail. The sinister force he had barely suppressed within him immediately erupted under the influence of this new ominous force. A chill swept through his entire body, causing him to shiver involuntarily. Without much time to think, a large number of shadowy attacks were rushing at him from all sides, and Guang Yu had no choice but to desperately dodge. Senior, can you hold on? Wang Teng's voice, with a hint of amusement, came from a distance. Guang Yu turned to look and noticed Wang Ting wearing a smile, reverting to his previous leisurely posture, completely different from the struggling person he had been just moments ago. A bolt of realization struck Guang Yu. Wang Ting, you set me up again. Guang Yu knew that Wang Teng did it on purpose. He shouted uncontrollably and his face turned as black as the bottom of a pot. At this moment, he finally regretted why he had fallen for Wang Teng's trap again. As they got closer to the creature's corpse, the number of shadowy attacks appearing around them continued to increase. The emergence of these shadowy attacks corresponded to their proximity, and he should have noticed it earlier. However, his overconfidence led him to believe that if Wang Ting could handle it, he could too, and he fell right into the pit that Wang Ting had dug for him. This bastard! Far away, Ran Qian and the others saw Guang Yu's furious and shocked expression, along with the wounds on his body, and finally realized that something had gone wrong. Their team leader had been tricked by Wang Teng again? But how was that possible, especially since it happened right in front of their eyes? How did Wang Teng manage to deceive them? They were all puzzled and couldn't figure it out. Wn Dong and the others were equally perplexed, having no idea about the situation ahead, but seeing Guang Yu being duped again made their expressions quite odd. Being tricked by the same person twice was quite the feat. They wondered if Guang Yu would develop some psychological trauma from Wang Teng's antics. It looks pretty dangerous. Gikdor suddenly showed a sense of relief. He was glad that Wang Ting had stopped him earlier. Otherwise, he might have been the one facing that dangerous situation now. Wang Ting paid no more attention to Guang Yu and proceeded step by step toward the corpse of the giant horn race. He seemed to disregard the surrounding shadowy attacks, not even bothering to evade them. He activated his shadow talent, and the shadow power surged from his body, pushing aside the shadowy attacks around him. Those shadowy attacks couldn't injure him in the slightest. He observed that these shadowy attacks had some similarities with spiritual attacks. If one didn't focus their attention, they would be difficult to detect. The reason Guang Yu was helpless was because these shadowy attacks were incredibly covert, and their multiplied numbers overwhelmed him. Soon, Wang Teng reached a distance of 5 meters in front of the giant horn race's corpse. With a sweep of his spiritual power, he retrieved the spatial ring. Previously, he was too far away, and the area was influenced by domain power. Within a few meters of the corpse, the domain's interference was stronger, preventing him from using his spiritual power. However, with the distance now reduced to just 5 meters, he could easily recover the ring. Chapter 2033. This is the correct way to hunt for treasure. 1. The space ring landed in Wang Ting's hand. His spiritual power surged out and entered the space ring. Boom. Crack. The spiritual imprint left by the universe stage martial warrior before him shattered immediately. After all, this individual had been dead for a long time, and the spiritual imprint inside had corroded over time, becoming extremely weak. With Wang Ting's spiritual power, he could easily break through it. Very soon, the situation in the space ring appeared before Wang Ting's eyes. Weapons, energy stones, various types of pills sealed in jade bottles, as well as various spiritual herbs, ores, and more. The collections of a universe stage martial warrior were indeed not to be underestimated. B0XO. Wang Teng glanced at the forehead of the giant horn race martial warrior. What a pity. His consciousness was destroyed and the small world in his body was probably destroyed. Most of its contents were lost in an unknown space, making them impossible to retrieve. Some universe stage martial warriors, before their deaths, would leave their created small worlds sealed somewhere, waiting for someone with an affinity to discover them. However, if a universe stage martial warrior met a violent death, their small world would generally not be preserved. It would either be thoroughly plundered or self-destructed, leaving nothing for their enemies. The universe stage martial warrior before him had been killed with his consciousness pierced, resulting in the collapse of his small world, which had vanished into the void. Far away, Guang Yu was held back by the shadowy attacks and couldn't attend to anything else. Wang Ting turned around, displaying a genial smile. Senior Guang Yu, I've obtained the space ring. I'll go ahead. Fut. Guang Yu was drenched in cold sweat, with multiple wounds covering his body, all caused by the shadowy attacks. Waves of shadowy power entered his body, blocking the flow of his force, and making his situation even more dire. When he heard Wang Ting's words, he couldn't hold back any longer and spurted blood, his face as pale as paper. In the end, he not only got duped but also gained nothing. It was infuriating. Oh, my God. Hes coughing up blood. Wang Ting couldn't help but exclaim, deeply shocked. He reflected on whether he had gone too far. Leader. Ran Qian and the others, from a distance, witnessed this scene, and their expressions turned pale. Leader, the space ring has been taken by him. You need to retreat immediately. Ran Qian urgently shouted. Guang Yu was in a difficult situation at this moment. If he could retreat, he would have done so a long time ago. Why would he stay here and struggle for fun? No, it was not fun at all. He was on the verge of tears. What were these shadowy attacks, and why were they so troublesome? He cursed himself for his recklessness, charging in so close and allowing the shadowy attacks to surge suddenly, leaving him with no opportunity to retreat. Wn Dong and the others looked at Guang Yu's current state and couldn't help but feel some sympathy. Being tricked like this would make anyone question their life choices. How tragic. Wang Ting leisurely made his way back, forming a stark contrast with Guang Yu. He was in no hurry and still had some attribute bubbles to collect. Shadow Domain *450 Shadow Domain *520 Shadow Domain *400 Her? There are a lot of attributes this time. Wang Teng was surprised. Was it because he was closer to the corpse? The closer he was, the more attributes there were. Guang Yu thought Wang Ting was taunting him, deliberately moving so slowly, which made him tremble with anger. However, Wang Ting didn't have time to pay attention to him and continued collecting attribute bubbles. After some time, he glanced at the attributes board. Shadow Domain, 203,000, third rank. In just a short amount of time, Wang Ting's mastery of the Shadow Domain had reached the third level, a significant improvement. In his mind, various insights about the Shadow Domain kept emerging, giving him a deep understanding of its power. The deeper his insights became, the more amazed Wang Ting was by the incredible capabilities of the Shadow Domain. The shadowy attacks he faced were only the majority basic manifestations of the domain's power. There were other aspects of the domain's power that had not yet been showed in this place. This domain was originally established by some powerful figure and attached to those black rods. After so many years, it had nearly been depleted. Even so, it was still powerful. Even a heaven-stage martial warrior like Guang Yu, who came from the stellar academies, was having a hard time. Even if 2 or 3 more martial warriors came, it might be able to hold them back. Of course, if they worked together, they would still be able to destroy this domain. That would depend on how smart they were. Wang Ting silently considered the changes in the domain, pondering who might have left behind this shadow domain. The nature of this shadow power was peculiar. It felt somewhat similar to the abilities of the dark apparitions but also exhibited distinct differences. Were the two connected in some way? Or was this shadow power belong to a certain special dark apparition race? Wang Ting believed he had a good understanding of the dark apparitions, but in reality, his knowledge might not be as comprehensive as he thought. There were still many mysteries and secrets surrounding the dark apparitions that remained hidden from most. The dark apparitions were already mysterious beings, and even scholars who specialized in studying them might not have a complete understanding of their nature. Well, let's take it one step at a time. First, I'll collect some gains, as they're all mine anyway. Wang Ting sighed, shook his head, and stopped dwelling on it. He continued to collect attribute bubbles. Guang Yu was on the verge of collapse. The sheer number of shadowy attacks was one thing, but the invasive shadowy energy within his body was a greater threat. He couldn't expel or suppress it, and continuing in this state would only result to his demise. Now, he was almost unable to hold on, his face contorted with agony, and his eyes showed a sense of desperation. Leader Ran Qian and the others had observed his condition. They shifted swiftly, ready to rush in and assist. Chapter 2034. This is the correct way to hunt for treasure. 1, 2. However, Guang Yu knew the tenacity and danger of these shadowy attacks. He shouted, "Don't come in. You can't handle these attacks." Unfortunately, he was a step too late. Ran Qian and the others couldn't just stand by and watch him die. They all rushed in. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Shadowy attacks were heading towards them, but fortunately, they were cautious from the start. They had seen Guang Yu's miserable state and suspected that there was some invisible danger. So, they proceeded carefully. They avoided several shadow attacks and couldn't help but wonder why these attacks were causing Guang Yu so much trouble. They exchanged glances and hesitated for a moment. However, after a brief delay, they continued to move forward. B0XO. Soon, they discovered the reason for Guang Yu's predicament. The shadowy attacks that were closing in on them were increasing in number at a visible speed. What a surprise! They walk into the trap. Wang Ting's eyes lit up, and his expression became rather peculiar. Seeing this, Wn Dong and the others turned to Wang Ting. Wang Ting calmly shook his head and indicated that their help might not be useful. Instead, they might become a burden. Wn Dong and the others breathed a sigh of relief. They had no desire to enter the area, especially after seeing how badly Guang Yu had been affected by the attacks within the first few hundred meters. It was a terrifying sight, and anyone witnessing it would feel uneasy. At this moment, Guang Yu felt a mixture of anger and gratitude. He had told them not to come in, but they had charged in any way. How were they supposed to leave later? How would they manage to get out? He didn't need to think to know that they would end up like him. "Don't come over," he shouted, hoping that his teammates would have second thoughts. Leader, don't worry, we're here to rescue you. Ran Qian responded loudly. Wang Teng almost laughed. These people were quite naive and idealistic. The reason Rong Qian and the others didn't retreat was that they found a way to coordinate and deal with the shadow attacks more effectively as a team. They believed that Guang Yu's struggles were due to his solo approach without coordination. With their coordinated efforts, they approached Guang Yu's location with confidence. In no time, they rapidly entered an area with extremely dense shadow attacks. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless shadow attacks rushed in from all directions, surrounding Ran Qian and the others. F***K. In the next moment, Ran Qian uttered a curse and his face turned pale. The shadow attacks had suddenly multiplied, catching them off guard. I told you not to come. Guang Yu exclaimed in pain and wanted to close his eyes, but he dared not. He knew that closing his eyes might mean he'd never be able to open them again. Ran Qian and the others. Accidents always caught them when they were unprepared. They were left in an awkward situation, as they had been quite confident when approaching. The unexpected increase in shadow attacks caught them off guard. Leader, don't worry, we will definitely make it our if we work together. Ran Qian's expression shifted as she regained her confidence and shouted. Let's hope so. Guang Yu glanced at her, but he couldn't shake the feeling that she was just trying to reassure him. Ran Qian was right about one thing. With their combined effort, they could last longer than Guang Yu alone. They gradually made their way closer to his position, fending off the shadow attacks. Guang Yu was on the verge of collapsing, and if they didn't help him soon, he might die in there. With Ran Qian and the others arriving, he finally felt some relief. Leader, you take the center and rest for a while. Any of the Heaven Stage martial warriors suggested. Okay. Guang Yu didn't hesitate, realizing this was not the time for pride. He immediately took out some healing pills and rapidly absorbed them to recover. Chapter 2035. This is the correct way to hunt for treasure. 3. Don't look at me like that, it's creepy, Wang Teng said, touching his nose awkwardly. If you don't need help, then forget it. I won't insist. As he spoke, a domain power silently spread from him and merged with the surrounding domain. The domain here already had a similar aura, so Guang Yu and the others didn't notice anything unusual. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Suddenly, the number of shadow attacks around them increased. Ran Qian, Guang Yu, and the others immediately noticed the problem. Their expressions changed. What happened? B0XO. The attacks have increased. The sudden increase in attacks threw off their coordination and they were in a frenzy. They were too preoccupied with defending themselves to pay any more attention to Wang Teng. This is too simple. We need to increase the difficulty, Wang Teng muttered to himself, shaking his head. Wang Teng, did you do something? Round Ball was suspicious. No, I'm not that kind of person, Wang Teng replied earnestly. Round Ball remained skeptical, as the attacks suddenly increased. If Wang Teng didn't do it, Round Ball would write its name backward. But it couldn't find any evidence. Also, it couldn't understand how Wang Teng had altered this domain. Even with strong natural talent, he couldn't have comprehended a unique domain in such a short time, right? The domain here was exceptionally mysterious and unique, unlike the common elemental domain. It would be challenging to understand it. Understanding each type of domain requires martial warriors to invest a significant amount of time in contemplation and learning. While the comprehension of elemental domains, like the 5 elements, was relatively straightforward due to their commonality, the present domain was notably distinct. This arcane field, a rarity never previously encountered, presents a substantial challenge to understanding, requiring an even greater investment of time and effort to comprehend. Hence, Round Ball couldn't understand how Wang Teng had so swiftly grasped the intricacies of this unique domain. It believed that Wang Teng had employed some unorthodox means to influence the power of the domain. For instance, the shadow power. Previously, when Wang Teng dealt with the shadows, Round Ball had speculated whether he could absorb shadow power. However, it had not realized that Wang Teng possessed the shadow talent, assuming that he used the devouring abilities of the Devour Nihility beast to consume shadow power. This was indeed a plausible explanation. The Devour Nihility beast was an enigmatic creature, and very few were aware of the true extent of its terrifying devouring abilities. Unfortunately, Wang Ting had never explicitly confirmed this, leaving Round Ball with unanswered questions. Seriously. He made it sound so mysterious. Round Ball couldn't care less, and it wasn't interested in finding out the details. Boom! A thunderous roar resounded as Ran Qian and the others erupted with their power. They had also realized that a special domain had formed in this area, and the power of their domain surged forth, contending with it. Oh no! These fellows aren't stupid. They know how to use their domains to destroy this place. Wang Ting's gaze sharpened, and he thought to himself. Boom, boom, boom. On Guang Yu's side, the four of them simultaneously unleashed their fifth-rank domains, forcefully assaulting the shadow domain in this area. Guang Yu, having partially recovered, joined in, erupting with his sixth-rank domain. With 5 Heaven Stage martial warriors unleashing their domain powers, the strength was certainly not to be underestimated. Although the shadow domain was unique and left behind by a powerful individual, not that easy to destroy, it was ultimately just a residual force and not the support of a true martial warrior. As Wang Ting turned to look, he indeed saw the black rods inserted into the giant hornrace's corpse quivering intensely, and the attached shadow domain power was rapidly depleting. Without external forces, the domain power on it might have lasted many years. But now, it probably wouldn't be long before it completely dissipated. Is it going to collapse? Wang Ting wondered to himself. He immediately merged the shadow domain within him into the surrounding domain power. Boom! The shadow domain erupted instantly. At this moment, Wang Ting took control of this realm and confronted Guang Yu and the others directly. How is this possible? We were just about to break through. Guang Yu and the others wore expressions of doubt and shock. A subtle smile curved at the corner of Wang Ting's lips. He manipulated the changes within the shadow domain, which he had just comprehended, and suddenly, shadows started to silently spread within the domain, creeping toward the shadows behind Guang Yu and his companions. In the next moment, their movements suddenly froze, and they became rigid as if their bodies were controlled, unable to move. What was going on? Guang Yu and his companions all had their faces alter drastically. In such a dangerous situation, suddenly being unable to move was extremely deadly. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless shadow attacks shot toward them with deadly intent. Break. Guang Yu's pupils constricted, and he shouted as his domain erupted entirely. Within his domain, there seemed to be a trace of power of origin. This was his trump card, as he was extremely wary of Wang Ting and had been reluctant to use it until now, but at this point, he had no other choice. Boom! Guang Yu possessed the 6th-rank realm of terror and steely attributes. When released at the same time, the power was astonishing. He managed to break free from the binding force of the shadows. Wang Ting was surprised and somewhat disappointed that his 3-rank shadow domain couldn't hold the opponent. As Guang Yu's realm power erupted, all the shadow assaults were pushed away, creating cracks in the ground. The local domain finally couldn't hold up any longer and shattered. Wang Ting shook his head, giving up on his original plan. It seemed this time he could only take half of the rewards. Chapter 2036. This is the correct way to hunt for treasure. 4. But it was close enough. Guang Yu's recent outburst didn't come without a cost, and it would be challenging for him to use it again soon. As for the others, they were also in a tough spot, with injuries and significant depletion of their domain power. This team had taken another hit after facing the shadow attacks. Sigh. Ran Qian and the others felt their bodies regain freedom and let out a sigh of relief. They exchanged glances, still shaken from the recent ordeal. Guang Yu wore a grim expression. He was seething with anger but knew it wasn't the others' fault. Without the help of his team, he might have faced the same fate. Faced with that binding force, he couldn't think of any better options. B0XO. Combat. All of this was thanks to Wang Ting. His eyes, filled with resentment, bore into Wang Ting. Wang Ting. A voice of deep frustration and anger escaped from between his clenched teeth. Slap. Wang Ting, on the other hand, clapped his hands together with an expression of amazement. Impressive, Senior Guang Yu, truly impressive. To break through such a dangerous domain, you're a role model for us all. This statement further infuriated Ren Qian and the others, making them want to rush up and confront Wang Ting head-on. However, Guang Yu didn't say much. He was too angry to form coherent words. He gestured for Ren Qian and the others to stand down and turned away. As for the space ring, he had given up on it. He knew that Wang Ting never intended to share it with them. This guy was clearly out to deceive them. Wang Ting's eyes flashed as he began collecting the attribute bubbles around him. Most of them were shadow domain attribute bubbles. There were also attribute bubbles of the 5 elements. His 5 basic forces increased slightly, but not by much, not enough to break through. However, there was no improvement in his 5-element domain. Guang Yu and the others' domains couldn't give Wang Ting any more enlightenment. Even the final outburst of Guang Yu's origin was of no use to Wang Ting. His origin power was too weak in comparison. Wang Ting had already reached the 2nd level, making it impossible to compare. This was why Wang Ting was so relaxed about letting them go. Otherwise, he would have to shear the sheep a bit more. Wang Ting glanced at his attribute panel and noted that the shadow domain had experienced the most significant growth. Shadow domain, 1000-3000, 3rd rank. After checking his attribute values, Wang Ting turned his attention back to the corpse behind him. He suddenly noticed that the black robes were still intact after the previous clash of domains. This thing might be valuable material. With a glint in his eyes, Wang Ting extended his spiritual power, causing the black tubes to vibrate. The vibrations grew more intense, and soon they were slowly pulled out from the giant horn race's body as if an invisible hand were plucking them. In the distance, Wn Dong and his team were taken aback. What was Wang Ting doing? He even refused to leave the black tubes inside the corpse. It seemed like Wang Ting wasn't leaving anything to chance, making sure not to leave anything valuable behind. At the same time, they speculated in hushed tones that the black tubes might have some special significance to draw Wang Ting's attention. Sizzle. A series of popping sounds echoed as the black tubes were almost simultaneously pulled out. Blood gushed out from the giant horn race's body. Boom. At that moment, the giant horn race martial warrior's body collapsed as it lost support. The wall behind him also disintegrated into dust. The domain's power had vanished, and the force of time had finally taken it away. This, Wn Dong and the others were extremely surprised. Even the previously departing Guang Yu stopped in his tracks, watching the situation with a flickering expression. One by one, the black tubes floated over under the control of his spiritual power, hovering in front of Wang Ting. He examined them closely but refrained from touching them. These tubes were tainted with ancient blood and looked rather repulsive. It can channel shadow power, which is quite intriguing, Wang Ting muttered to himself. He allowed a wisp of shadow powery to flow from his body, following the black tube's path, and it encountered no hindrance, confirming his suspicions. Round ball, do you know what material this is? He asked. I have no clue. It's a very peculiar material, Round Ball pondered for a moment and responded. We'll study it when we get back. Wang Ting tossed the black tubes into his space ring. They needed to be thoroughly cleaned. He didn't dare to touch them as they were. Well, he'd have others help with the cleaning. The question was, who would get the task of cleaning them? As they watched Wang Ting approaching, Wn Dong and the others couldn't help but focus on the spatial ring he held, their eyes filled with anticipation. A space device of a universe-stage martial warrior surely contained a lot of valuable items. Wang Ting smiled slightly and put the ring away, leaving the remainder feeling disappointed. They couldn't even get a glimpse of what was inside. Such a tightwad. Don't worry, we'll distribute the items based on your contributions once we return, Wang Ting said calmly. Based on contributions. The group's eyes lit up. Wang Ting didn't say a lot further and turned to walk forward. As he did, he glanced at Guang Yu and his group, who were becoming increasingly distant. It seemed like they had no intention of continuing to follow him. Is this it? They are giving up just like that. Wang Ting furrowed his brow, feeling somewhat disappointed. But he didn't let his guard down entirely, as he couldn't be certain if they would pull a surprise attack. The group continued moving forward, passing by single ancient structure after another. However, they were disappointed to find that there were no further corpses like the ones they had encountered earlier. After a few further minutes, Wang Teng noticed something peculiar. The surrounding structures were no longer disintegrating into dust. Although they were in ruins, they were yet standing. Moreover, he could see a majestic palace in the distance, taller and further grandiose than the other buildings. Chapter 2037. This is the correct way to hunt for treasure. 5. Ahead should be their destination. Wn Dong and the others also noticed this. Their expressions were filled with excitement. They just saw the corpse of a universe stage martial warrior, so there must be even greater treasures further inside. Wang Ting picked up the pace, heading directly toward the magnificent structure. In no time, the full view of the grand structure slowly revealed itself before their eyes. Wang Teng and the others were awestruck. Spectacular. It was incredibly spectacular. B0XO. Everyone stood there, staring at the structure in a daze, their expressions blank, as if they couldn't come to their senses. Even for these talented martial artists from the stellar academies, such a spectacular structure was a rare sight. What was more remarkable was the indescribable sense of ancient and profound wisdom emanating from the structure. It felt as if they had been transported back to ancient times, creating a profound impact on their senses. Look, there seem to be inscriptions here. A cry of astonishment came from Dong Lei's mouth. Inscriptions. Everyone, including Wn Dong, was shocked and quickly looked over. Wang Ting stopped in his tracks and looked at a stone wall. Indeed, there were ancient inscriptions on it. Is this the ancient language? Wn Dong and the others had seen it before, so they recognized it. Wang Ting glanced at them but wasn't surprised. The stellar academies had access to a lot of ancient knowledge and even possessed ancient technological artifacts like the ancient warship. Recognizing some ancient clan script was not a big deal. However, what astonished everyone was the presence of mottled bloodstains on the wall, which had turned black with age, indicating their great antiquity. Wang Teng, these inscriptions seem to have been written by someone's fingers, Round Ball suddenly said with a solemn tone. Finger written. Wang Teng took a closer look and indeed saw that it was the case. As martial warriors, they had occasionally used this method for writing, and so they could discern some clues. Wn Dong and the others also noticed this unusual detail and looked uneasy. The presence of finger-written inscriptions, still bearing bloodstains, had a sinister aspect to them. They were in the process of translating these ancient inscriptions, but their proficiency was limited, and the translation was proceeding slowly. Wang Ting directly accessed the Devour Nihility Beast's memories and quickly translated the ancient script. However, the content of the translation left him horrified. Death. All of you must die. No one can escape. Wn Dong and the others had also translated it, and their expressions changed slightly, their voices carrying a chilling tone as they recited the words. The words in this inscription seemed to carry endless resentment and a sense of melancholy, shaking everyone's heart. What could have happened here? Why were these words left behind? A series of doubts emerged in their minds, leaving them increasingly uneasy. Suddenly, a cold snort came from Wang Ting's mouth. I wonder who's trying to scare us. Let's go inside and take a look. Could there be some unknown danger inside? Wan Dong hesitated. If you're afraid, you don't have to go in, Wang Teng replied indifferently. Afraid? How could I be afraid? Wn Dong immediately straightened his neck. He didn't want to be looked down upon by Wang Ting. Being defeated was one thing, but if he were also looked down upon, he couldn't even keep a shred of his pride. As a genius from the stellar academies, he couldn't afford to lose face. Well, since we're here, we should go in and take a look, Gikdor and the others said with a smile. Wang Teng, I feel like there's something inside that's calling out to me. The Queen suddenly spoke to Wang Teng through voice transmission, sounding somewhat uncertain. Calling out to you? Wang Teng was slightly puzzled, but he nodded subtly without saying much and walked directly into the grand building. The others followed closely. As they continued on their way, the expressions of the group grew increasingly somber. Everywhere they looked, there were traces of weapons, slashes, sword marks, and countless bloodstains, all of which had turned black over time. It was a terrifying sight, as if a great battle had once taken place here. Many buildings had collapsed but were not completely obliterated, still standing as remnants of the past. They far outshone the ordinary buildings outside. The Queen's expression kept changing, as if she could sense the intense sorrow in the air, and her mood became quite unpleasant. Wang Teng glanced at her, wondering if it had something to do with her bloodline. However, he soon stopped concerned about it because he observed numerous weapons in the surroundings. Some were stuck in the ground, others embedded at angles in the walls. Swords, spears, and various other weapons were scattered all around. Moreover, some of these weapons were extraordinary, ranging from the celestial stage to the cosmos stage and heaven stage. Although he hadn't found any universe stage weapons yet, Wang Teng didn't miss a single one, collecting them all. He released his spiritual power and the arms flew towards him. Then, they disappeared. Wn Dong and the others were stunned. This guy was indeed scavenging everything, not leaving anything behind. Most importantly, they hadn't even realized it, and Wang Teng had already started. Was this the difference? No wonder they were so weak. Just look at him. This was the correct way to hunt for treasure. Wang Teng, don't you find it strange? There are many signs of battles, but we haven't seen a single corpse, Round Ball said suddenly. Wang Teng was stunned. That's right. Exactly, that was the issue. No wonder he had sensed something was amiss earlier. No corpses. How could there be no corpses? There was a universe stage martial warrior's corpse outside, but here, not a single one could be found. This was strange. Everyone, be cautious. There's something peculiar about this place. Wang Teng relayed Round Ball's caution to the group before continuing. Wang Dong and the others were taken aback and became more vigilant. Indeed. The lack of any remains was certainly suspicious. Chapter 2038 Let Me Pinch You. Are you real? 1. No corpses. Within the entire palace, there was not a single corpse to be found, yet there were bloodstains everywhere, leaving a peculiar atmosphere. The group began to feel nervous. What could have happened here? Where had the corpses gone? Were they plundered by the enemy? But that didn't make sense either. If the corpses had been plundered, why leave the weapons behind, benefiting Wang Teng? B0XO. Wn Dong and the others couldn't help but look towards Wang Teng. What are you all staring at me for? Look for treasures. Wang Teng grumbled. These people were all heaven stage martial warriors from the stellar academies, but they appeared rather unintelligent. Silence. The group was speechless. This guy just reminded them to be cautious a moment ago, and now he was urging them to find treasures. He seemed to have a strong money-oriented mindset. However, he had a point. They came here primarily to find treasures, and even with the danger present, they couldn't forget their main objective. Thinking about it, the group started to regain their focus. They suddenly felt that, compared to Wang Teng, a cosmos stage martial warrior, they weren't up to the task. Damn it, what was going on? Since being captured by Wang Teng, they had faced one setback after another, and their self-confidence was on the verge of being crushed. The group immediately became more serious and began searching for treasures in every direction. As they watched Wang Teng fervently collect weapons, they couldn't help but feel a tinge of envy. However, they understood that they were merely helping Wang Teng search for treasures, and their final share would depend on their contributions. Well, they should give it their best shot. Wn Dong sighed, feeling a bit miserable about his current situation. He had fallen to a low point, and it was quite pathetic. If any of his fellow students from the Stellar Academy saw him like this, he probably wouldn't be able to show his face again. The group stayed within visible range of each other while searching. The palace complex was vast, containing various palaces, gardens, and structures that appeared to be the residential area of the Naga royal family. According to records, the Naga race had a distinction between the royal family and commoners, with the royal bloodline being of high nobility and holding absolute authority. Judging from the overall scale of these ancient buildings, this area seemed to be the central region of the complex, where the royal family resided. It explained why these structures had not decayed over time, unlike the other buildings. The materials used in these palaces were unique and could withstand the passage of time. From a distance, Wn Dong spotted something that made him utter a soft exclamation. He glanced at Wang Ting from the corner of his eye, seeing that Wang Ting wasn't paying attention to his side, and he casually walked over. It was in front of a large palace gate with two statues, each with the upper half as a human and the lower half as a snake. Snake race. Wn Dong couldn't help but glance at the queen, but then furrowed his brow. Something's not right. It was a little different. Although they were both snake men, these statues of the snake men seemed to have larger body sizes and some scales on their upper bodies, making them look more ferocious. Could it be that the snake men on the Scorpion King star had degenerated? Wn Dong wondered to himself. This wasn't out of the realm of possibility. Some races undergo evolutionary changes over time, and their bloodlines may regress, leading to different physical characteristics from their ancient ancestors. In his speculation, the snake race on Scorpion King star might be what remained after the degeneration, while these ancient structures appeared to be remnants from the ancient Naga civilization. Of course, these thoughts only flashed past Wn Dong's mind. What truly caught his attention wasn't the appearance of the Naga clan sculptures but the material they were made of. Snake Spirit Ice Stone. It's the Snake Spirit Ice Stone. Wn Dong had encountered this material before. It was a unique stone used for forging universe-stage weapons. It had ice attributes and was quite rare. Although he wasn't an ice elemental martial warrior, he knew that such a rare material could fetch a high price. A hint of greed flashed in his eyes, and he wanted to claim it for himself. Wang Ting had acquired a universe-stage martial warrior's space ring, and there was no guarantee he would share many valuable items with them later. It might be better to secretly keep some now. However, the statues were quite large, and collecting them would undoubtedly draw the attention of others. Sigh. Wn Dong sighed in his heart. He felt that he was in a difficult position. He entered a treasure mountain but couldn't take any treasure. Slap. Just then, a hand suddenly landed on his back. Wn Dong jumped in fright. "Senior, you've found something good." Wang Teng's voice came, filled with excitement. Snake Spirit Ice Stone is a great material for forging ice element weapons. I can't believe it has been carved into a statue. What a waste. Wn Dong. Alright, no more dilemmas. Senior, you have a keen eye. You managed to spot such a good find. It was right there in front of us, and if you didn't pay close attention, it might have been overlooked, Wang Teng praised. With a sweeping motion of his hand, he collected the two sculptures. "I'll keep these for now, and I'll share them with you later," Wang Teng declared confidently. Wn Dong's mouth twitched slightly as he felt like he was bleeding inside. Dong Lei, Gikdor, and the others gathered around, surprised that Wn Dong was the first to discover treasure. It seemed that this palace truly held valuable items. The group's excitement grew, and they were all eager to explore further. Only the queen felt the corners of her eyes twitching when she saw Wang Teng keeping the two snake men statues. These seemed to represent the ancestors of her people. It felt strange to see an outsider taking them away. "Let's go, we should explore the interior." There were valuable items at the entrance. "I'm sure there are even more inside," Wang Teng said as he moved toward the main hall. The rest followed closely, entering the grand hall. The hall was quiet and spacious, with an spooky gloom enveloping it. A freezing chill hung in the air, making everyone feel uncomfortable. Chapter 2039. Let me pinch you. Are you real? 2. Wang Teng stood in front of the grand hall, facing the direction of the entrance, and noticed a larger statue. This statue appeared to be placed there as an object of worship, with offerings arranged around it. Just as I thought. Wang Teng's eyes gleamed as he approached the statue, ready to collect it. "Hold on." The queen's face turned black and she couldn't help but speak up. "What's the matter?" Wang Teng asked. The queen took a deep breath, realizing she didn't have the authority or power to stop this guy. She reluctantly said, "Let me pay my respects. I believe this is my ancestor. B0XO. Her tone seemed to carry a hint of resentment. Wang Ting paused for a moment and replied, "All right, go ahead and pay your respects. After that, I'll collect it." The Queen. The others couldn't help but stifle their laughter. They could tell the Queen's intentions, and it was clear that Wang Ting was feigning ignorance. But they also understood that they wouldn't pass up such a valuable item. The statue before them was also made of snake spirit ice stone, a valuable material. The Queen knew that she had done her best and that her ancestors wouldn't hold it against her. She began performing an ancient snake race ritual before the statue. She noticed some incense on a nearby table and reached to light it. "Wait." This time, Wang Ting spoke up. The Queen froze and looked at him with confusion. Wang Ting stepped forward, snatched an unlit incense from the table, and brought it to his nose. His eyes lit up like two bright light bulbs. "The incense. Is there something special about it?" the Queen asked hesitantly. Wn Dong and the others looked at Wang Ting curiously too. It was just SN incense. How could it be a treasure? But, looking at Wang Ting, he seemed even more excited than when he saw the statues. Was there something special about this incense? "This is the soul congealing incense." Wang Ting chuckled in his heart. He was pleasantly surprised. As an alchemist, he was highly sensitive to such things. Upon entering the Grand Hall, he detected a unique scent, but it wasn't until he saw this incense that he recognized it as soul-congregating incense. The soul-congregating incense had the effect of enhancing one's spirit. For a divine spirit master, this was a valuable find, as it could assist in enhancing their spiritual power cultivation. Of course, it had its benefits for martial warriors as well. While their spiritual power enhancement might not be as pronounced as for divine spirit masters, spiritual power was essential for anyone. It seemed that the Naga race was indeed wealthy and generous, using soul-congregating incense as an offering. "You're incredibly lucky. It looks like this journey is going to yield substantial rewards," Round Ball commented, feeling somewhat surprised that even this inconspicuous incense could be a valuable discovery. Wang Ting grinned to himself and quickly stored the soul-congregating incense. He knew better than to waste such valuable items. Meanwhile, the group, including Wn Dong and the others, remained puzzled, not understanding the significance of the incense. They watched in wonder as Wang Tong collected even the partially burnt sticks from the incense burner, their curiosity growing more intense by the moment. Good stuff. This must be good stuff. Otherwise, Wang Tong wouldn't be this exaggerated, collecting even the residual incense in the incense burner. Unfortunately, he didn't explain, and they couldn't guess what it was. Then Wang Ting looked at the other items on the table. If the incense was a valuable find, these other objects were unlikely to be inferior. "This incense burner is nice. I'll take it. The offering tray looks like an antique. I'll take that too. The oil lamps on both sides seem valuable, so I'll take those as well. Oh, and this table looks good. I'll take it." Wang Ting waved his hand, collecting item after item, not sparing even the table. The others were dumbfounded. They had underestimated Wang Ting's boldness and thick skin. How could a normal person do this? Finally, Wang Ting looked at the colossal Naga statue, then glanced at the Queen, and asked, "Can I take this too?" "Go ahead." The Queen's mouth twitched as she turned away and grudgingly replied. "Well, then I won't be polite," Wang Ting exclaimed and collected the statue. The entire hall suddenly felt a bit eerie. If anyone else were to come here, they'd find it odd, like something was missing. "Let's go, check out the other places." Wang Ting eagerly moved towards the exit. The others had no choice but to follow, their spirits dampened. This guy was just too stingy, he took everything, leaving them with nothing. However, when they reached the door, Wang Ting suddenly halted. Thud. A very faint sound of footsteps echoed in the hall. The sound of footsteps was different from their own, and it quickly faded away as if it had never appeared. Wang Ting turned abruptly, his eyes bursting with golden light as he activated his real eye, scanning the darkness. The others also heard it, their faces changing, their hearts filled with unease as they watched their surroundings. Footsteps. How could there be footsteps? In such an environment, the sudden appearance of footsteps was indeed eerie. If it weren't for the presence of the group, they might have felt genuine fear. Wang Teng frowned. He hadn't seen anything, and the footsteps had disappeared. His real eye didn't capture anything. You all heard it, right? He asked the others, not believing it was a hallucination. We heard it. The others nodded. Interesting, it's getting more interesting. Wang Teng looked around and glanced deeply into the darkness before turning and leaving. Chapter 2040. Let me pinch you. Are you real? 3. The group stepped outside the main hall, finally feeling relieved. The tension inside had been so high that they were on the verge of breaking into a sweat. What was that? Dong Lei asked hesitantly. Who knows? Wang Ting shook his head. Why did the sky suddenly turn dark? They all turned their gaze towards the sky, perplexed. There was a patch of sky on top of the buildings. The previously bright sky was now gradually turning dark. But the speed at which it darkened wasn't like a normal transition into night. Even Wang Teng couldn't discern the mechanism governing day and night in this place. B0XO. Within moments, the entire sky had turned pitch black, and even the Heaven Stage martial warriors felt as if they were plunged into utter darkness. Evil. The darkness in this place was so complete that it was impossible to see anything at all. The group wore uneasy expressions on their faces. They had already been on edge after hearing the mysterious footsteps, and now, with the sudden onset of darkness, their anxiety had only intensified. Tap, tap, tap. Suddenly, that eerie sound of footsteps returned, this time even more intense, coming from a distance. The group's hair stood on end, their skulls felt like they were about to split open. They were on the verge of screaming. Especially for Dong Lei, she had already opened her mouth, and Wang Teng quickly covered it to silence her. A lady was still a lady. It seemed that even though she was a Heaven Stage martial warrior, her composure was still somewhat lacking. Dong Lei appeared to realize that she had acted a bit hysterically. Her body involuntarily twitched and she gave Wang Teng a somewhat surprised look. Don't make a sound, Wang Teng said using voice transmission. Dong Lei nodded, and he released his hand. This woman's body was rather soft. Cough, cough. Wang Teng didn't dwell on it further. He understood that this was not the time for such thoughts. He immediately peered into the darkness in the distance. At this moment, the surrounding palaces were nothing more than black silhouettes, resembling monstrous creatures lurking in the dark. The mysterious footsteps seemed to emanate from an unknown source, and they couldn't pinpoint their location. Let's hide for now. Wang Teng led the group back into the same grand hall they had explored earlier. They positioned themselves behind the door, gazing outside. This grand hall was situated adjacent to a main corridor, and once they adapted to the darkness, they could still discern some shapes. However, they had to be close to see anything clearly. Only Wang Teng possessed a special eye technique that allowed him to see slightly further. Tap, tap, tap. The footsteps drew nearer, and dark figures appeared at the corner of the main corridor, approaching from a distance. Wang Teng's pupils contracted, his expression as if he had seen a ghost. No. He felt like he was truly seeing ghost. Those dark figures were individuals in tattered armor, exuding an aura of decay and showing no signs of life. These were not members of the snake race, but human-like creatures with legs. Although Wn Dong and the others couldn't see them, they heard the approaching footsteps, and they were equally nervous. Their palms turned sweaty. Don't make a sound. Wang Teng reminded them once more. He felt nervous too. Soon, Wang Teng's companions also saw the dark figures approaching in the distance, and their expressions changed drastically, their hearts filled with horror. Fortunately, Wang Teng's timely reminder prevented them from crying out in fear. Dong Lei clamped her hand tightly over her mouth, her eyes trembling. What is this? Wn Dong asked through voice transmission, his voice trembling. It seems to be the bodies of martial warriors, Wang Teng uttered in a deep voice. He considered many possibilities, and it made sense why they couldn't see a single corpse. It appeared that these corpses could still move, which was beyond belief. How can corpses move? Dong Lei asked. Ever heard of the dark apparitions? One could get killed but remained controlled, Wang Teng replied irritably. But we haven't sensed any dark force. Wn Dong furrowed his brows. I'm just giving you a random example. Maybe it's something similar. In any case, there's nothing to be afraid of. Wang Teng rolled his eyes. Why was he taking things so seriously? He was a bit scared too, but now wasn't the time to show it. If they all got scared, they wouldn't be able to continue exploring. Could it be the same kind of shadow as before? Those shadows could control the living. Maybe they can control the dead as well, Gikdor speculated. That's a possibility, Wang Ting nodded. He had thought of that as well, but without close contact, they couldn't determine if these armored corpses had a shadow within them. Tap, tap, tap. Those lifeless corpses in tattered armor walked past the hiding place of the group and disappeared into the darkness. The group breathed a sigh of relief. Thanks to Wang Ting's timely reminder, they had all concealed their presence and hadn't been detected. Let's go. Avoid those armored corpses and let's continue exploring for treasure. After we're done, we'll leave immediately. This place gives me the creeps, Wang Ting said. Everyone was speechless. Despite the situation, Wang Ting's determination to find treasure remained undeterred. He was indeed bold. Wang Ting waved his hand and swiftly crossed the main avenue and entered the opposite hall. Wow! Another statue! Wang Ting exclaimed in surprise and proceeded to collect it without much thought. He continued to investigate the objects inside the temple, including items on a nearby table and even the valuable soul congregating incense. Nothing was spared. Next on the list, the third hall. There were no statues in this hall and it seemed more like a living space with various daily items inside. Wang Ting didn't find these items appealing and told Wn Dong and the others to pick whatever they wanted. Wn Dong and the others were speechless. What would they possibly need from this hall? This grand hall seemed to be a place where women lived, with several items related to women's use. Would they have any use for these items? Meanwhile, both Dong Lei and the Queen seemed quite enthusiastic, finding some antique artifacts that piqued their interest. Chapter 2041 Let Me Pinch You. Are you real? 4. The Queen stood in front of a vanity table, picked up a jade bottle, opened it, and took a sniff, releasing a delightful fragrance. So fragrant. Everyone was momentarily stunned and turned to look. Even Wang Ting was surprised and came over to the Queen to see what she was holding. What kind of perfume is this? Are ancient people using perfumes now? They are quite trendy, Wang Ting curiously asked. Wn Dong and the others looked at him in disbelief, thinking he was quite ignorant. Wn Dong said, "Don't underestimate the people of ancient times. They had many things that were much better than what we have now." "Alright, my bad. I guess I'm not well informed," Wang Ting said nonchalantly. "Do any of you know what fragrance this is?" The others exchanged puzzled glances and shook their heads. B0XO. Looks like you guys don't know either," Wang Ting said with a touch of disdain. Wn Dong and the others suddenly felt a bit embarrassed but also a little defiant. This knowledge was quite niche. Who would know what perfume this was? Wang Teng, it seems to be the famous blood orchid fragrance of the Naga race, said Roundball suddenly. Blood orchid fragrance? Wang Ting was very surprised and asked, "How famous is it?" "It's extremely famous. Let me put it this way, all the female warriors in the universe take pride in owning a bottle of blood orchid fragrance. Those who can use this perfume are almost always individuals with a certain status. Just applying a little on your body can enhance your charm," explained Roundball. "Enhance my charm? That's amazing," Wang Teng exclaimed. "Isn't that very precious?" He had never expected that a casually placed bottle of perfume on the vanity table had such a remarkable origin. It must be very precious. It is said that the material used to make blood orchid fragrance is a rare flower called heavenly fragrant blood orchid, which only the Naga race knows how to cultivate. It's extremely rare and challenging to grow, so the quantity of blood orchid fragrance is naturally limited. With so many female warriors in the universe, the fight to get it is intense, Roundball explained. Wang Teng's eyes lit up as he stared at the jade bottle in the Queen's hand. The Queen looked at him with an expressionless face, then sealed the bottle with its stopper and silently put it away. Wang Teng's mouth twitched. He had offered them to choose anything earlier, so he couldn't take back his words. Damn it. He wished he had chosen something for himself earlier. This blood orchid fragrance could make for a perfect gift. The Naga race was nearly extinct, so this perfume was undoubtedly a collector's item and even more precious. Suddenly, he realized something and immediately opened the cabinet beneath the vanity table to check if there were any more bottles. Unfortunately, it seemed that there were none. The cabinet was filled with various women's items. Dong Lei noticed his expression and couldn't help but ask, "Wang Teng, is that perfume very valuable?" "No, not at all. It just smells good," Wang Teng replied. "Really?" Dong Lei looked at him skeptically. "Of course, why would I lie to you? I'm a grown man. Would I deceive you over a little perfume?" Wang Teng declared with conviction. Dong Lei started to believe him. "Maybe it just smells good." Wang Ting hurriedly made his way to another palace. This was the residence of the royal Naga family, so there should be more than one palace where the females resided, right? No matter the species, royal families would surely have access to more beautiful women. However, just as he exited the door, the sound of footsteps approached once more. Tap, tap, tap. As they got closer, Wang Ting had no choice but to retreat back into the palace and wait for them to pass. "Are those armored corpses on patrol?" Wan Dong asked. "Yes, they are on patrol. They are still patrolling even after death." "That's some dedication," Wang Ting said with an admiring expression. Wan Dong and the others were at a loss for words. "What do you mean by dedicated? They are already dead. There's no dedication left. They are definitely being controlled." The armored corpses quickly moved away, and Wang Teng rushed to the fourth palace. Dong Lei, seeing his hurried demeanor, suddenly realized something and quickly followed him. This guy had definitely lied to her earlier. Fortunately, the fourth palace was another residence of female Naga, and Wang Teng arrived at the vanity table. After a quick search, he indeed discovered a bottle of blood orchid fragrance and promptly stashed it away. Dong Lei arrived a bit later, and upon seeing that he seemed to have hidden something, she looked skeptical. "Wang Teng, you're not interested in women's stuff, are you?" "Impossible, how could I, a grown man, be interested in women's stuff?" "Don't accuse me wrongly," Wang Teng said with a straight face. Dong Lei looked at him skeptically and started scouring the vanity table, but unfortunately, she didn't find anything. Wang Teng looked around but didn't find anything else worth noting. He continued to the next palace. To his surprise, the next three palaces were also residences of snake women, and Wang Teng discovered 2 more bottles of blood orchid fragrance. 3 bottles of blood orchid fragrance now lay inside Wang Teng's space ring. Dong Lei, on the other hand, discovered nothing and felt quite frustrated. Being a woman, she also appreciated fragrant perfumes, but she didn't get a single bottle. The queen looked at Wang Ting in silence. She didn't need to think to know that he had changed his mind and secretly hidden those perfumes. These palaces were all female residences. It was impossible that there were no fragrances. "Wang Ting, did you conceal them? Give me 1 bottle, just 1. Dong Lei looked at Wang Ting with hopeful eyes. "No, I would never take that kind of thing. You must have misunderstood." Wang Ting shook his head and, seeming to pity her, added, "You can take any of these women's items. There are plenty of them, and I don't mind." Chapter 2042 Let Me Pinch You. Are you real? 5. Dong Lei took a deep breath and glared at him with resentment. She could easily afford those everyday items, so what was the point of taking them? This guy definitely hid the perfumes. This was infuriating. Wan Dong and the others watched Wang Ting in disbelief. He was competing with a woman. That was embarrassing. At that moment, a sudden scream came from a distance. "What's going on?" Wan Dong and the others were taken aback and immediately became alert. "Let's go." Wang Ting immediately rushed toward the source of the scream. He was incredibly fast, making no sound at all, as if he had melded into the darkness, rendering his figure invisible. B0XO. Wan Dong and the others were utterly shocked. How did this guy's speed in the darkness seem to have increased? For most people, their speed would typically decrease in the dark. But he, on the other hand, was running even faster. The most significant aspect was the sense of concealment. If it weren't for the fact that the person was right in front of them, they might not have been able to detect him. However, they didn't consider it as a dark ability. Instead, they assumed he must be using some kind of special stealth technique to achieve this. In a hallway within the Grand Hall, a group of people unexpectedly encountered the armored corpses and a battle erupted. There were a total of 5 individuals, and they were also students from the Stellar Academy. However, they were not the same group as Guang Yu and the others. Boom! The 5 Heaven Stage martial warriors released their forces and hurled their attacks at the corpse in front of them. Their expressions were filled with fear as if they had seen something unimaginable, and 2 of the female warriors even turned pale. Frightening. This was horrifying. In this pitch-black environment where they could hardly see anything, encountering a group of armored corpses exuding a rotting aura had almost scared them out of their wits. What in the world is this? One of them exclaimed in shock and anger. Their attacks landed on the armored corpses but only managed to push them back. The corpses charged back at them relentlessly. This sight sent a chill down the spines of the Heaven Stage martial warriors. What was particularly unsettling was that the armor on these corpses could withstand Heaven Stage attacks. Their attacks left no visible marks on them. Swoosh! Suddenly, one of the armored corpses drew its blade and swung it, casting an eerie, dim blade light in the darkness. Splat! One of the Heaven Stage martial warriors, too slow to react, found the blade light just as it struck him, slashing across his chest and causing a gush of blood. The injured Heaven Stage martial warrior was filled with shock and anger, repeatedly retreating as he felt a sinister aura invading his body, causing his primal force to become sluggish. Yuan Bai! The other Heaven Stage martial warriors shouted in concern. Be careful. These armored corpses' attacks are quite mysterious and hard to see. Yuan Bai didn't have much time to explain and quickly warned them. The moment his voice subsided. Roar! Several of the armored corpses let out roars and drew their weapons, swinging them toward the Heaven Stage martial warriors. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the darkness, the blade light suddenly appeared. Despite being alerted, the Heaven Stage martial warriors were still a step too slow. Splat! One female warrior with long blonde hair managed to evade, but her arm was grazed, causing her to bleed profusely. She grunted in pain and quickly retreated. Another young-looking Heaven Stage martial warrior shouted, his sword emitting a burst of sword energy as he swung it fiercely. Boom! The 2 attacks collided, and the shockwaves of their forces pushed the young man away. 2 other warriors were luckier. They managed to avoid the attacks entirely and suffered no injuries. Darn it, what kind of attack is this? A petite female warrior in a pink suit of armor gasped, furrowing her brow. Little Bai, Sister Wei-Na, are you two okay? We're not dead, but our force transmission is a little sluggish. Whatever you do, don't get hit, or that strange force will enter your body, Little Bai, an ape race martial warrior, said with a serious tone. Yuan Bai is right. This force is quite mysterious, and my force feels sluggish too. What is this? I've never seen anything like it. The woman with long blonde hair named Wei-Na frowned. Roar! The armored corpses roared and, without giving the group much time to think, charged at them once more. Also, tap, tap, tap. In the distance, a more intense cacophony of footsteps approached. In the darkness, nothing was visible, but an invisible pressure weighed on the minds of the group. Tong Yen, we have to retreat. We can't handle this thing, the young martial warrior stated urgently. Let's find an opportunity to withdraw, the petite female warrior shouted. Boom! In the next moment, the attacks came, and they rushed to evade, fighting and retreating in the darkness. They were currently in a long alley, and just as they were about to retreat, a dense sound of footsteps approached from behind. Damn it! There are armored corpses behind us too. The group's faces turned pale, their pupils constricting to the extreme. Dark shadows raced toward them from afar, and invisible attacks were heading straight for the Heaven Stage martial warriors. The armored corpses in front also swung their blades, transforming into shadows and blocking their path. Tong Yen and the others unleashed their domains, enveloping themselves in a sandy yellow glow to defend against the shadowy blade attacks. Boom! 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 The shadowy attacks struck, causing a ear-splitting explosion. The guarding barrier formed by their domains trembled violently, instantly revealing cracks. Bang! In the next moment, the domain guarding shield couldn't hold, shattering into pieces. Roar! The distant armored corpses reached them, and they were now trapped between the attackers from the front and back. The armored corpses swung their swords toward them. Damn it! They want to kill us, but it's not going to be that easy. Yuanbai cursed, a massive shield appearing in his hand, which he slammed onto the ground. Chapter 2043. Let me pinch you. Are you real? 6. Boom. Flames surged, forming over a dozen flame shields that covered all directions, enveloping the group. The power of their domains was also integrated into these shields. The scorching heat spread. Boom. 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 The attacks struck the shields and were surprisingly blocked. However, the flame shields vibrated violently, and Yuanbai's face turned crimson. He almost spat out blood but managed to hold it back. B0XO. Come little Bai. Tong Yen held a sword in her hand and shouted. Having cooperated frequently, the group was highly synchronized. Yuanbai immediately understood and opened a gap in the flame shield before him. Tong Yen's sword swung down with a resounding crash, unleashing a blazing sword energy. Boom! Several armored corpses were sent flying, engulfed by flames. It seems to be working. Tong Yen panted, feeling relieved. Boom! The outside attacks continued unabated, with the armored corpses appearing tireless. They would keep attacking until they killed those who had intruded into the palace. Hurry, I can't hold on much longer. Yuanbai's forehead bulged with veins, and he shouted. Let me. Another handsome young Heaven-stage martial warrior stepped forward, wielding a sword with blue force wrapped around it, compressing the power of his domain. Little Quan Quan, do your best. Tong Yen shouted. Shut up. Qin Quan growled and swung his sword forcefully. Boom. Several armored corpses were cleaved apart. The strength of these Heaven-stage martial warriors was not weak. At this moment, none of these martial warriors held back, unleashing their most powerful attacks as they cut through the flame shields. Soon, a path appeared right in front of them. Okay. The group was overjoyed, and Little Bai wasted no time. He drove the flame shields forward, crashing into the front. Boom! The armored corpses around them were knocked aside as they charged ahead, on the verge of breaking through the encirclement. Roar! But just at that moment, a furious roar sounded from the sky. A piercing sound of breaking through the air followed, leaving Little Bai and the others astonished. They looked up and saw a dark figure descending from the sky, bringing a terrifying attack crashing down. Boom! Little Bai could no longer hold on, and the flame shields around them crumbled, dissipating into countless flames. In the light of these flames, Tong Yen and the others finally saw the dark figure that had appeared. It was a tall figure with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a snake, also clad in armor and exuding a sinister and decayed aura. Noga race! Tong Yen shouted in shock. Roar! The corpse of the Noga race roared, wielding a sword, and directly cleaved down. Tong Yen, with her petite figure, was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. In her pupils, the reflection of the sword seemed to reveal an invisible shadowy blade light. Am I going to die here? Sister, it looks like he'll be going ahead of you. Unfortunately, I couldn't catch up to you. Her petite and lovely face now showed a hint of paleness. She didn't have much fear of facing death, but there was a trace of regret. Chirp! Just then, a melodious chirping suddenly rang out, and in the distance, a brilliant and golden radiance raced towards them. It was a massive divine golden phoenix, exceptionally dazzling against the black night sky, making it hard to keep one's eyes open. This divine golden phoenix was incredibly fast. Its cry had just reached them from a distance, and in the blink of an eye, it seemed to have pierced through the void, appearing directly in front of them, facing the Noga race armored corpse. Boom! A terrifying thunderous roar echoed as the divine golden phoenix clashed with the invisible shadowy blade in a flash of golden light. The shockwaves of their confrontation reverberated outwards. Quickly, go! A sharp command resounded in Tong Yen and the others' ears. As they snapped back to reality, a figure had abruptly materialized by their side. In the next instant, their vision blurred, and they vanished from that spot. Boom! The colossal divine golden phoenix, in the end, succumbed to the power of the invisible shadowy blade, exploding into radiant golden streaks that dispersed in all directions. Yet, these golden streaks seemed to be under the control of an enigmatic force, disappearing in the darkness as though they had never existed. Meanwhile, in front of the Naga race's armored corps, those 5 Heaven Stage martial warriors had also vanished without a trace. Roar! The Naga race's armored corps let out a furious roar, soaring into the sky, circling for some time without finding anything, and eventually disappearing into the darkness. Inside one of the palaces, Tong Yen and the others cautiously peered out, watching the Naga race's armored corps above them. Finally, they breathed a sigh of relief, and all 5 of them sat down on the floor, utterly drained. That was close. We almost died. Tong Yen patted her small chest, her face reflecting the joy of having narrowly escaped danger as she gazed into the darkness. Her expressive features displayed gratitude, and she looked towards the source of their salvation. Wei Ena, Yuan Bai, and the others were also filled with excitement, eagerly awaiting a glimpse of their savior. To our benefactor, thank you for saving us. Bai Yarrow expressed her gratitude with a respectful bow. A gentle chuckle suddenly resounded from the shadows. Seniors, there's no need to be so polite. We happened to be in the right place at the right time. This voice, Tong Yen and the others were momentarily taken aback. They all felt that the voice was familiar, but they couldn't quite place it. They exchanged glances, puzzled. Wang Ting. Tong Yen's eyes suddenly widened as a flash of realization crossed her mind. Senior sister, you still remember me. Wang Ting was stunned. He walked out from the darkness with a smile. It's you. Why are you here? Their words were filled with shock, disbelief, and deep questioning. How could it be him? How could the person who saved them be their junior brother? Previously, aboard the starship of the Stellar Academies, they had wanted to bring Wang Ting into their team to take care of him. But now, Wang Ting saved them when they were in danger. The contrast between the two situations left the Heaven Stage martial warriors somewhat bewildered. It seemed like something wasn't quite right. Are you really surprised? Wang Ting chuckled. Yes, wait, oh my, Wang Ting, please let me pinch you to make sure it's really you. It's impossible that you saved us just now, is it? Are you real? Tong Yen climbed to her feet and approached Wang Ting, her petite figure jumping as she tried to pinch his face to confirm that he was not some illusion. Wang Ting looked at his senior sister in disbelief. Senior sister, are you serious? Chapter 2044 Shadow Blade. Shadow Puppetry Seal. 1. Wang Ting skillfully evaded Tong Yen's attempt to pinch his face. This senior sister is really friendly. Can you just pinch any guy's face casually? Of course not. Stingy little guy, just let me pinch you. Tong Yen pouted, showing a hint of disappointment when her attempt failed. Senior sister, face pinching comes with responsibilities, Wang Ting teased. I take full responsibility. Tong Yen's eyes lit up. I love cute, young boys. B0XO. Wang Ting. Is this a female rogue? Junior Wang Ting, is it really you? Bai Yarrow exclaimed in surprise. Who else did you think it could be? Wang Ting replied. True. Bai Yarrow nodded after a moment's pause. In that perilous situation, only someone they knew would come to their aid. They hadn't expected that a connection made on their way here would turn into such a fortunate encounter. Furthermore, the outcome exceeded their expectations. Tong Yen, you're lucky to run into Wang Ting. Otherwise, this time, you might have met your end here. Another voice came from the darkness. Tong Yen and her companions were taken aback. They had been so focused on Wang Ting that they hadn't realized there were others present. Of course, it was also to evade the scrutiny of the armored corpses that Wen Dong and the others had hidden their presence, so as not to be detected. As they emerged from the darkness, Tong Yen and her companions immediately recognized their faces. Wen Dong, it's you. Tong Yen exclaimed in surprise. It was clear that they also knew Wen Dong and the others. How did you end up with Junior Wang Ting? Bai Yao asked curiously. Wen Dong and his group felt a bit awkward. They couldn't just admit that they had been captured by Wang Ting, which would be quite embarrassing. Cough, cough. Wang Ting cleared his throat and said, "We're all friends here, working together, working together." Tong Yen scanned Wang Ting and Wen Dong's faces and felt that something was off, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Wen Dong and his group breathed a sigh of relief. At least Wang Ting had saved face for them. At this moment, they surprisingly felt grateful to Wang Ting. Tong Yen didn't dwell on the matter. She was more curious about Wang Ting's strength. How could he be so powerful? Moreover, the appearance of the divine golden phoenix earlier seemed to be divine spirit master. Tong Yen's mind raced as she thought of something, her astonishment growing. He must be a divine spirit master. It was clear that they had underestimated Wang Ting, this junior of theirs. No wonder he insisted on carrying out a mission alone even though it was a nightmare-level mission with an 80% fatality rate. Without substantial confidence, who would dare to do such a thing? This junior Wang Ting was truly remarkable. Despite being a freshman, he was almost on par with the seasoned students. His future was limitless. Tong Yen wasn't the only one who considered of this. Bai Yao, Wei Na, and the others had the same thought. In an instant, they viewed Wang Ting with more importance and their intentions to build a strong relationship with him grew stronger. Furthermore, Wang Ting was a Grandmaster alchemist. Such talents were not easy to come by. With these thoughts in mind, Tong Yen and the others felt incredibly grateful, and they warmly expressed their appreciation towards Wang Ting. Seniors, you should heal yourselves quickly. Those armored corpses might pass by here at any moment, Wang Ting advised. Yes. Tong Yen and the others nodded. Without any hesitation, they sat down and took out healing pills, starting their recovery. Their previous battle had drained their strength significantly, and they had sustained injuries. Without recuperation, they would be a burden. As their wounds slowly healed, the expressions of Tong Yen and the others didn't improve. They couldn't shake off the persisting gloomy power, which coiled around their force and even their physical bodies, causing them considerable discomfort. Damn it! What is this power, and why is it so persistent? Yuan Bai complained as he opened his eyes. The others also opened their eyes, their expressions far from reassuring. This strange force was beyond their expectations. Senior sister, give me your hand. Let me take a look, Wang Ting said to Tong Yen. All right. Tong Yen hesitated for a moment, not knowing what Wang Ting intended to do. However, considering his status as a Grandmaster alchemist, she considered he might have a solution. So, she extended her hand. Wang Ting held Tong Yen's hand, and his initial impression was that it was a bit soft. Cough, cough. Coughing discreetly, Wang Ting quickly regained his composure, putting on a serious expression as he carefully sensed the situation. He indeed detected the presence of the shadow power. Don't resist, Wang Ting said. Tong Yen blinked and nodded. Yuan Bai and the others were astounded. They looked over and saw Wang Ting. Could he have a solution? Wang Ting activated his shadow talent, and a gentle suction force emanated from his palm, flowing into Tong Yen's body. What is this? Tong Yen exclaimed, her eyes widening as she stared at Wang Ting in disbelief. She felt the shadow power being absorbed. It was unbelievable. How did he do it? In no time, all the gloomy force within Tong Yen's body had been completely absorbed, leaving no trace behind. She immediately felt much lighter, and the cold, eerie sensation had vanished entirely. The bluish hue on her face had also disappeared. Is it better now? Yuan Bai and the others were astonished, looking at Tong Yen, and then back at Wang Ting. Wen Dong and his group were equally surprised, though they had a bit of mental preparation as Wang Ting had effortlessly resolved the shadows earlier. The situation with Tong Yen and her friends appeared to be similar to what had happened to Guang Yu and the others. Could it be that these armored corpses were controlled by something similar to these shadows? Chapter 2045 Shadow Blade. Shadow Puppetry Seal. 2. Who's next? Wang Teng asked after releasing Tong En's hand. "I'll go," Yuan Bai stepped forward. His injury was the most severe, with a long gash across his chest that even cut through his battle armor. Wang Ting nodded and placed his hand on Yuan Bai's chest, drawing out the shadow power within him. Then, one by one, Wei Ena and the others approached, and Wang Teng repeated the process. Fortunately, their injuries weren't too severe, so it didn't take much effort for Wang Ting to help them completely rid themselves of the entangling shadow power. If Guang Yu and the others were to witness this scene, they'd probably be infuriated by the stark contrast to their ongoing suffering. They were still being tortured by the shadow power. "Junior Wang Ting, your skills are truly exceptional," said Bai Yarrow as she felt his condition improve. "B0XO. Just a little trick," Wang Teng replied with a faint smile. "So, what exactly is this eerie power?" "It's like shadows," Yuan Bai frowned. "We encountered some dark figures on the way. Their attacks were quite similar to these armored corpses, and they indeed possess a shadow-like quality. Let's call it shadow power for now," Wang Ting vaguely explained. "Black shadows. We came from another direction. We didn't see them," Tong En said in deep thought. "How did you run into these armored corpses?" Wang Teng asked. "The sky suddenly darkened, and we didn't have time to find a hiding spot. We ran into them halfway on the road," Bai Yarrow explained as she sighed. They were indeed quite unlucky. They had barely traveled halfway before unexpectedly encountering these armored corpses. It was a terrifying experience to stumble upon a group of undead creatures in the pitch-black darkness. "Your luck is something else," Wang Ting said, amused by their terrified expressions. "Do you happen to know how these armored corpses sense things?" Tong En asked. "They rely on sound, light, and potentially even the presence of life," Wang Teng replied. Tong En nodded and continued, "Did you see that particular Noga RCE armored corpse just now? It's the most terrifying one and much stronger than the others." "The Noga race," Wan Dong and the others repeated. "You don't know?" Tong En asked in surprise. "We thought it was the snake race," Wan Dong said. "The Noga race is a snake race too. However, in ancient times, they were called the Noga race. It's a powerful race." Tong En glanced at Wang Teng and explained. Wang Teng and the Queen maintained their composure, giving off the impression that they had just learned about this. The Noga race armored corpse earlier was indeed very powerful, possibly at the universe stage. "I could only hold it off for a short while. If I had been a bit slower, I might not have been able to save you," Wang Teng explained. In reality, the key factor was that these armored corpses appeared to only sense the presence of life, making them somewhat inflexible. Wang Teng had simply used his space abilities to teleport the group, hiding them effectively from the armored corpses. Additionally, these armored corpses seemed to have some limitations. They wouldn't enter the palace easily. Otherwise, Wang Teng and his companions might not have escaped detection. If these had been genuine living warriors, the situation would have been much more difficult, as they would have thoroughly searched the palace below. At that time, it would be hard for them to remain hidden. Was that a space skill just now? Tong En suddenly recalled the sensation and was astonished. "Just a small trick," Wang Ting said casually. Tong En and the others were left speechless. To them, Wang Teng's small trick was a remarkable feat even though Heaven Stage martial warriors had some grasp of space abilities. In the chaos of the earlier attack, it would have been impossible for them to escape through space manipulation. However, Wang Ting managed to do it, teleporting all 5 of them simultaneously. It was unbelievable. They felt this junior becoming more and more mysterious. These Noga race armored corpses seem to move only within a certain range, and they appear to be guarding something. Wang Ting changed the topic and contemplated. Tong En and her companions were puzzled, but when they thought about the direction the Noga race armored corpse appeared and disappeared from, they began to speculate. "Are you suggesting?" Tong En inquired in amazement. "Do any of you have the courage to come with me and take a look?" Wang Ting inquired with a smile. Tong En and her friends hesitated for a moment. They had just been harassed by the Noga race's armored corpse, and naturally, they were a bit hesitant. However, their competitive spirit soon overcame their apprehension. If Wang Ting wasn't afraid, why should they be? Moreover, having nearly been killed earlier, they wanted to take revenge too. It was simply because they had been unprepared and caught off guard that they had appeared so weak. Why not? Tong Yen bared her small, tiger-like teeth and said assertively. Then let's go, Wang Ting uttered with a slight smile. The group contemplated for a moment before they stealthily ventured into the darkness, heading in the direction where the Naga race's armored corpse had disappeared earlier. Of course, they didn't overlook the surrounding palaces. They were determined to rummage whatever they could. Tong Yen and the others didn't argue over it. Their lives had been saved by Wang Teng, and everything else was secondary. Wang Ting had initially considered sharing the loot, but they insisted against it. In this regard, Wang Teng couldn't help but admire their straightforwardness. They uttered no, and that was final. They didn't even bat an eye. Shortly after, they passed through the alley where the previous battle had taken place. Chapter 2046 Shadow Blade. Shadow Puppetry Seal. 3. Shadow Power * 500 Shadow Power * 2200 Shadow Blade * 2000 Shadow Blade. Wang Teng was stunned. A sharp glint appeared in his eyes. This should be the blade skill used by the previous Naga race armored corpse. In the next moment, an image immediately appeared in his mind. B0XO. Unique light and shadow condensed, with a human upper body and a serpent lower body, unmistakably the Naga race. This light and shadow wielded a war blade, slashing down with a resounding roar. The power of shadow gathered and formed a blade of shadow that was extremely obscure, almost ethereal. Boom. One slash across the sky, unparalleled in power, as if it could not only cut through original force attacks but also sever even spiritual attack. Sigh. Wang Teng came back to his senses from his realization, letting out a slight sigh. Shadow Blade. Such an eerie sword technique. It can harm the spiritual body. His eyes flickered, feeling both strange and delighted because he had already mastered this blade technique. Shadow Blade, 2000-3000, Foundation. Although he was only at the foundation stage, Wang Teng was very pleased. He felt like he had made a great gain. The blade technique used by the Naga race's armored corpse, he had just comprehended, was incredibly powerful. If he hadn't attacked from a distance using the Phoenix Golden Feather Blade, he might have been seriously injured. Fortunately, he happened to pass by and retrieved the dropped attribute bubbles. Otherwise, he would have suffered a huge loss. Furthermore, the power of this blade technique was related to his shadow talent and shadow power. In general, the higher the shadow talent and the stronger the shadow power, the more powerful the technique would be when executed. This was a combat skill entirely dependent on innate talent. Wang Ting found it incredibly strange and couldn't help but marvel at the vastness of the universe, where there were endless wonders, including combat skills relying on innate talents to be unleashed. It was an eye-opening experience. In addition to the blade technique he had just comprehended, he also gained 3,000 points of shadow power. Wang Ting nodded to himself, thinking it wasn't too shabby. At this point, he was increasingly sure that those armored corpses were most likely being controlled by shadows. Otherwise, how would they drop shadow power attributes? Fear stems from the unknown. Now that he knew what he was dealing with, Wang Ting felt less worried. Also, he had a way to deal with the black shadows, so he wasn't afraid of them. With his shadow talent, Wang Teng could be considered their natural enemy. However, that particular Naga race's armored corpse was relatively powerful, and subduing it wasn't going to be easy. What if there were more of them? That was why Wang Teng brought Tong Yen and the others along. Sometimes, eating alone wasn't a good habit, as it might lead to missing out on important opportunities. The group had already scoured the nearby palaces, and Wang Teng, Tong Yen, and the others successfully crossed the alley without encountering the armored corpse patrol. However, after they had moved through the area, they began to hear the sound of marching footsteps. The armored corpses had appeared. They were approaching from another alley. Wang Ting immediately signaled for everyone to crouch down and cautiously peeked around the corner. Sure enough, they spotted a patrol of armored corpses slowly advancing. Wan Dong, Yuan Bai, and the others got nervous. If they were discovered, it could lead to a fierce battle. Just then, Wang Ting felt a weight on his back as a delicate figure draped over him. A head popped out beside Wang Ting. "What do we do now?" Tong En's voice emerged in Wang Ting's mind. "Stay quiet, hide your presence," Wang Ting warned everyone through voice transmission. He then allowed the shadows of the surroundings to merge with his own shadow power, creating what seemed like a shroud of darkness. In the already dark environment, nobody could detect anything unusual. Wn Dong and the others had grown accustomed to King Ting taking charge and immediately followed his instructions, concealing their presence in a corner. Tong En immediately concealed her presence, crouching behind Wang Ting. After all, even if they were discovered, they had this guy to shield them. Yuan Bai and the others hesitated for an instant, but, seeing Tong En already complying, they followed suit, concealing their presence and hunkering down in a corner. Soon, the patrol of armored corpses passed by not far from them, emanating an aura of decay. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of footsteps echoed in their ears. The sensation was akin to when you're trying to sleep at night, but there are footsteps perpetually walking back and forth by your bed, which was rather eerie. However, these armored corpses didn't seem to notice them. They just walked past and disappeared into the darkness. Phew. Someone sighed in relief. "Wang Ting, did you do something? How did they not detect us?" Tong En inquisitively inquired. "I didn't do anything." "Really?" Wang Ting replied. "TSK, who are you trying to fool?" Tong En rolled her eyes, clearly skeptical but decided not to press the matter further. He probably figured it was Wang Ting's secret, and if he didn't want to share, asking too much would be annoying. Round Ball was delighted. Finally, someone else had faced a setback from Wang Ting just like it did. Curiosity was not its exclusive trait. Others had it too, and they all shared the discomfort. "Wait for me here." With his thoughts in motion, Wang Ting disappeared from their view. After realizing that the shadow power could conceal them from the armored corpses, Wang Ting became bolder. He hoped he could hide from that specific Naga race's armored corpse. But, he knew it might not be possible. It seemed less rigid than the others. "Hey." Tong En hadn't even spoken when Wang Ting disappeared before her eyes. She was astonished by his extraordinary skills. "Do you know what he's up to?" Tong En turned and glanced at Wn Dong and the others. "I have no idea." Wn Dong shook his head. Chapter 2047 Shadow Blade. Shadow Puppetry Seal. 4. Why do I feel like your presence is so weak? "You're not doing anything," Tong En teased. Wn Dong and the others were speechless. What did she mean by not doing anything? How could she insult them like this? A strange look came over the faces of Yuan Bai and the others. Were these people just here for the show? "Don't look at us like that. It's not our time to act yet," Wn Dong said nonchalantly. On the other side, Wang Ting dragged one of the armored corpses into a corner. He activated his shadow talent, and a powerful suction emerged from his palm. B0XO. The armored corpse struggled violently, and its armor produced a continuous clanging sound. Damn it. Wang Ting's expression shifted slightly. He had thought he had taken care of this armored corpse, but it appeared there was a flaw during the absorption process. Tap, tap, tap. The footsteps in the distance were getting closer again, and it seemed like those armored corpses had heard something and were quickly returning. Wang Ting immediately increased the absorption rate with a powerful suction force. Bang, bang. The armor shook even more violently as if a person inside was thrashing about frantically. Something's not right. Wang Ting's gaze sharpened, and he activated his real eye, examining the interior of the armored corpse. As he suspected, he saw an array-like structure inscribed within the armored corpse, locking away the shadow power within. It couldn't be extracted through brute force alone. "This won't stop me," Wang Ting sneered, and his shadow power surged out, invading the armored corpse's body. Boom. The array was instantly shattered. The pulling force erupted. Strands of shadow power finally drifted out from within the armor, absorbed by Wang Ting. At the same time, Several attribute bubbles emerged from the armored corpse, and Wang Ting immediately picked them up. He didn't have time to examine them closely and simply left the armored corpse behind as he swiftly retreated. After the shadow power was absorbed, the armored corpse instantly decayed, turning into dust and dissipating. Wang Ting glanced back with astonishment, but he didn't linger. He quickly left the area before the armored corpse patrol arrived. Shadow puppetry seal. With several attribute bubbles flooding into his mind, Wang Ting began to understand. So, the seal inside the armored corpse is the shadow puppetry seal, an array that uses shadow power to control the corpse, keeping the shadow power confined within the body for manipulation. The reason those armored corpses can move and fight is because of this shadow puppetry seal. In Wang Ting's mind, a rather complex formation pattern emerged, and he abruptly halted in his tracks. Shadow puppetry seal, 303,000, foundation. I just picked up 300 points of attributes. They are just at the foundation stage. Those armored corpses are shadow puppets, and they contain this kind of formation seal. Wang Ting's eyes glittered with excitement. It was time to collect more attribute bubbles. Wang Ting's eyes shone brightly. This shadow puppetry seal was indeed formidable. According to the insights he had just gained, by obtaining a powerful enough cadaver and inscribing the shadow puppetry seal with an adequate amount of shadow power, he could create a formidable shadow puppet. If he could obtain the corpse of a universe stage martial warrior and elevate his shadow power to the corresponding level, Wang Ting could craft a universe stage shadow puppet. The actual power it could wield would depend on the corpse's state of preservation and the stage of the shadow puppetry seal. To craft the seal, apart from requiring a substantial amount of shadow power, Wang Ting would also need some special materials. The grade of these special materials also determined the power of the shadow puppet. Wang Ting thought of the universe stage corpse from the giant horn race. It was initially thought to be of little use, but now it seemed to have some potential. Although the corpse had been damaged to some extent, for Wang Ting, it was a perfect experimental subject. Universe stage corpses were rare, and obtaining one was an exceptionally difficult task. For martial warriors, a powerful shadow puppet was an incredible ace up their sleeve. When facing a stronger opponent, they could release the shadow puppet and, while not guaranteed victory, it would certainly aid in self-survival. If luck was on their side, they might even catch the opponent off guard with it. Wang Ting's eyes gleamed with determination. Instead of leaving immediately, he decided to target the group of armored corpses. Such a great opportunity to reap benefits shouldn't be wasted. With a quick movement, Wang Ting blended into the shadows. He ignited the shadow merging secret skill to approach the armored corpses stealthily. He had noticed that using his shadow energy to power the shadow merging secret skill could effectively deceive these armored corpses. He had successfully retrieved a cadaver earlier without being detected. Soon, a patrol of armored corpses came walking from a distance. Unaware of Wang Ting's presence, they continued their rigid patrol and moved away. Wang Ting followed closely behind them, moving silently. He seized one of the armored corpses, releasing his shadow power to immobilize the shadow power within the corpse, rendering it temporarily motionless. He then dragged it away. The other armored corpses didn't notice anything unusual and continued their patrol. These are truly a bunch of lifeless puppets. Wang Ting chuckled to himself, hiding in the shadows. He used his previous method to destroy the shadow puppetry seal within the armored cadaver and absorbed the shadow power. An attribute bubble floated up, and Wang Ting promptly collected it. Shadow puppetry seal * 250, only 250 points this time. Wang Ting shook his head in disdain. It was lower than the first one. This was unforgivable. Chapter 2048 Shadow Blade. Shadow Puppet Restriction. 5. Even though he had to exert a lot of effort to drag these armored corpses, the attributes they yielded weren't enough to cover the costs of his efforts. Nonetheless, he didn't stop. Wang Ting continued to rush towards the armored corpses. When you have the chance to fleece the sheep, you should take it. One by one, Wang Ting dragged the armored corpses away, and the patrol of these corpses gradually dwindled. Yet, they remained completely unaware. Wang Teng's mastery of the shadow puppetry seal increased rapidly. It didn't take long for him to advance from foundation to well-versed. Shadow puppetry seal, 505,000, well-versed. Wang Teng closed his eyes and took a moment to sense his insights. He felt a very familiar sensation. B0XO. Comet feels good. The feeling of rapidly mastering a certain skill was indeed very satisfying for Wang Teng. Wang Teng smiled and prepared to continue. But, at this moment, roar. A thunderous roar echoed from the front. Wang Teng stopped in his tracks, his face showing a somewhat embarrassed expression. Meanwhile, on the other side, Tong Yen and the others had been waiting for Wang Teng to return for a while, but instead, they heard the angry cries of the armored corpse. They exchanged puzzled glances. What happened? Bai Yao asked after some hesitation. Did he provoke the armored corpses? Tong Yen asked curiously. Very likely. Wn Dong suddenly chimed in. Dong Lei, Gikdor, and the others nodded, their expressions carrying a touch of certainty. Knowing Wang Teng as they did, he was indeed likely to do such a thing. Should we go take a look? Tong Yen furrowed her brow, expressing her worry. Maybe it's better not to. With our current strength, we might not be able to help much, and we could end up being a burden to him, Wn Dong suggested. Tong Yen and the others were speechless. They were being rejected. Well, that's not what I meant. It's just that these armored corpses are better handled by Wang Teng, considering his experience. None of us can do it, Wn Dong clarified. You don't need to say more. We understand, Yuan Bai sighed. He felt a little disheartened, as he never thought he'd be told he lacked the strength one day. But, he couldn't argue with the truth. Swoosh. During their conversation, a figure darted out from the darkness and landed in front of the group. Run. Hurry. Wang Ting appeared and urgently urged everyone to flee. Wang Ting, what exactly did you do? Tong Yen couldn't help but ask. I didn't do anything, Wang Ting hurriedly replied. Stop asking questions and run, or it'll be too late. Boom, boom, boom. In the distance, there was a rumbling sound, as if a large number of armored corpses were charging towards them. Damn. Tong Yen and the others couldn't help but curse. Without thinking, they immediately started running. Although they couldn't see the situation in the darkness, they could easily guess what was happening in front of them. The sight of so many armored corpses charging at them was bound to be terrifying. Oh my God! They had no other option but to run. While running, Tong Yen glanced back and saw a dark mass behind them, with armored corpses pouring out from various alleys, closely pursuing them. It made her turn pale with fear. Wang Ting, you know how to stir up trouble. It wasn't me. They suddenly went crazy. It has nothing to do with me, Wang Tang replied, also glancing back, his scalp tingling. Damn it, where did all these armored corpses suddenly come from? He didn't see any of them just now. How did they all appear at once? That was scary. The group continued to sprint in the darkness, putting in every ounce of effort, without daring to pause. In this intricate maze of passages, they zigzagged wildly, desperately fleeing for their lives. However, the armored corpses were not losing their grip and continued to pursue them closely. What do we do now? Tong Yen panted as she asked. Head over there. Let's go. Wang Teng looked around, then waved his hand, leading the group towards the location where the Noga race armored corpse had appeared earlier. If we charge over like this, we'll definitely draw out that Noga race armored corpse. Tong Yen's expression changed slightly. I know, but I want to lure it out, Wang Teng said with a determined look. Are you intentionally attracting these armored corpses here? Tong Yen seemed to have realized something, and she said with surprise. Wang Ting's expression turned strange. Did this senior sister misunderstand something? The group quickly approached the location where the Noga race's armored corpse had appeared earlier, which was a massive palace. According to Wang Ting's memory, this palace should be the central area of this place. Before it got completely dark, they had seen the grandeur of this palace. But, in the dark, they could only make out its enormous silhouette. As they got closer, a sense of eerie foreboding emanated from the palace. Roar. Suddenly, a furious roar echoed out from inside the palace. Boom! A figure emerged from the darkness, emanating a strong aura of decay. It charged towards Wang Ting and the others with a terrifying presence. Here it comes! Wang Teng's eyes gleamed, and he pointed ahead, commanding, "Go!" Golden streaks of light shot out from his body, resembling golden shooting stars, heading straight for the Naga race armored corpse. Roar! The Naga race's armored corpse let out a furious bellow and drew the war blade from its waist, slashing it out powerfully. The aura of Shadow Blade filled the air. At that moment, the dark golden light was still midway through, but it rapidly converged and transformed into a divine golden phoenix, fiercely colliding with the attack. Boom! The collision of the two attacks created a blinding golden light, illuminating the surroundings. Wang Teng and the others saw the palace clearly and found the entrance. As the shockwaves of their force spread outward, the ground bore the brunt, leaving a trail of destruction. In this intense exchange, the durability of the ground proved insufficient to withstand the sheer force of their attacks. Boom! The Phoenix Golden Feather Blade dispersed under the enemy's blade, unable to withstand it. The difference in power between Wang Teng and the Naga race armored corps was substantial, making the situation quite uneven. Fight! Tong Yen and the others yelled and attacked. Yuan Bai advanced in front and a flaming shield appeared to block the blade glow from the Shadow Blade. Boom! Yuan Bai was directly knocked back, his body leaving a long trail on the ground along with the flaming shield. Tong Yen and the others flanked from both sides and launched attacks with their forces, leaving the Naga race's armored corps no room to breathe. Wn Dong and the others joined in, cooperating with Tong En's group, all of them using their full strength. Their attacks landed on the armored corpses without stopping. The combined power of over a dozen Heaven Stage martial warriors was not to be underestimated. The Naga race corpse was pushed back, roaring in frustration. At this moment, Wang Teng's Phoenix Golden Feather Blade reassembled and transformed into a divine golden phoenix, launching an assault once more. At the same time, a battle blade appeared in his hand, and he swung it mightily. His shadow talent activated, gathering shadow power into a Shadow Blade imprint. Wang Teng's control over the Shadow Blade was still at the foundation level, so he wasn't as proficient, but with the Phoenix Golden Feather Blade taking the brunt of the force in front, he had enough time. The Naga race armored corpse swung its blade again, and the Shadow Blade aura collided with the Phoenix Golden Feather Blades. The Phoenix Golden Feather Blades naturally couldn't hold up against it, but Wang Teng's Shadow Blade followed. He skillfully avoided the Naga race armored corpse's blade from the side, and his blade slashed towards its head. The Naga race's armored corpse was already restrained by the others, so it couldn't react in time. Wang Teng's blade struck its head directly. Splat! The Shadow Blade aura left a mark on its forehead, cutting through the skin, but that was all. This Naga race armored corpse was at least at the universe stage in its living state, and Wang Teng's shadow power and shadow talent were only at the first level. He couldn't harm its flesh. However, Wang Ting wasn't trying to damage its flesh. His target was the shadow puppetry seal inside it. He stared intently at the Naga race's armored corpse, not knowing if his assault had any effect. Tong Yen and the others didn't know what Wang Teng was up to. When they saw the seemingly weak attack, they were a bit puzzled at first, but they soon realized his intentions. This fellow was just a Cosmos stage martial warrior. Even though he had more techniques than the average martial warrior, he was still not powerful enough to contend with a universe stage martial warrior. Wang Ting, can you manage it? If not, let us seize over, Tong Yen shouted. Wang Ting was speechless. He was underestimated. Move aside quickly, it's very dangerous, Tong Yen said again when she saw him standing there and blocking their assault angle. Wang Ting. However, before he could respond, Tong Yen and the others noticed something unusual. The movements of the armored corpse in front of them seemed to have become sluggish. It stopped attacking. Tong Yen and the others were stunned. They looked at the Naga race's armored corpse in front of them and didn't know what happened. Who just said I couldn't manage it? Wang Teng remarked. Tong Yen. Chapter 2049 Unyielding Willpower. Dark Shadow Sword. Sword Spirit. 1. Tong Yen was feeling a bit frustrated. She had just questioned Wang Ting's abilities, and now she found herself proven wrong. Didn't this fellow just cut a small wound on the head of the Naga race's armored corpse? Why had the armored corpse stopped moving? Something wasn't right. The others were equally perplexed. They had assumed that Wang Ting's strength, while impressive, wouldn't be enough to deal with a Naga race's armored corpse capable of wielding universe stage power. It wasn't that they looked down on Wang Ting, it was just a matter of them potentially underestimating his abilities. Now, their perceptions had been turned upside down. B0XO. It seemed that Wang Ting's strike had indeed been effective. But, how was this possible? It was just a small cut, but the Naga race's armored corpse lost its ability to move. Wang Ting, how did you do it? Tong Yen couldn't help but ask. I just made a random slash. I didn't expect this Naga clan's armored corpse to be so fragile, Wang Teng responded. Tong Yen. Was this fellow showing off? This was outrageous. How could they not know the strength of that Naga clan's armored corpse? Even with a dozen heaven stage martial warriors joining forces, they couldn't defeat it. Now this guy was telling them he casually solved it with a sword strike. This was beyond belief. Yuan Bai and the others were speechless. How did they not realize that this junior, Wang Ting, liked showing off so much? He seemed so friendly, yet he turned out to be a show-off. Damn it. They were wrong about him. Wang Ting paid no attention to their reactions. He approached the Naga clan's armored corpse and, with a glint in his eye, realized that this corpse was, at the very least, a universe stage martial warrior. Its body was still intact, showing no signs of damage. Now that the shadow puppetry seal within it had vanished, he only needed to inscribe a new shadow puppetry seal to control it. With this in mind, he waved his hand and collected the Naga clan's armored corpse. Yuan Bai and the others were slightly puzzled, wondering why he was taking this Naga clan corpse. After all, it was just a lifeless body, dead for who knows how many years. Its vitality was long gone, and even if it was universe stage martial warrior, wouldn't it be of little use? Unless he intended to study it. The Naga race was a rare sight, making their corpses somewhat valuable for research. However, for people like Wn Dong and his group, it was nothing out of the ordinary. Throughout their journey, Wang Ting had collected all sorts of items and corpses, so taking another corpse was no big deal. These people were kicking up a fuss over a small matter. Wn Dong and his companions glanced at Yuan Bai and the others, feeling a subtle sense of superiority. Their knowledge and experience were truly unmatched. Let's go and explore inside. Wang Ting led the way towards the Grand Hall. The Naga race's armored corpse was now under Wang Ting's control, and the other ordinary armored corpses in the vicinity didn't dare to approach the Grand Hall. It seemed like they were wary of something. Tong Yen and the others looked back and felt relieved. They continued to follow Wang Ting toward the Grand Hall. They proceeded with caution. The Grand Hall exuded an eerie atmosphere, and even before entering it, they felt an overwhelming, intangible pressure that seemed to engulf them. This pressure was formless, yet it gave them an indescribable sense of powerlessness. Boom! The group couldn't help but step back, their faces showing signs of alarm. Wang Ting's gaze sharpened, and he refused to retreat. He let out a cold snort and, at that moment, a powerful surge of energy enveloped him. Majestic and ancient. It was the primordial consciousness. Wang Teng erupted with a formidable aura to resist the overwhelming tension emanating from the Grand Hall. In his perception, this pressure also carried the essence of consciousness, but unlike his own, it exuded an indomitable and unstoppable, battle-conscious. That's right. Battle-conscious. Wang Teng had previously grasped the concept of battlefield awareness, which was a form of combat awareness and not exactly battle-conscious, but they shared some similarities. Wang Teng had previously grasped the concept of battlefield awareness, which was a form of combat awareness and not exactly battle-conscious, but they shared some similarities. But, why was there battle-conscious in this great hall? Wang Teng was a little curious. He resisted the overwhelming and majestic battle-conscious and advanced step by step toward the interior of the hall. The rest of the group watched in astonishment as he forged ahead. This guy was actually resisting the formidable tension without taking a step back. After exchanging glances, each of them released their aura and stepped forward into the hall. However, they realized that they couldn't match Wang Ting's presence. His aura suppressed theirs. From a close distance, they could feel the deep and ancient aura emanating from Wang Ting, which left them deeply awestruck. Why did Wang Ting possess such a unique aura? This kind of aura was usually only found in immensely powerful and ancient individuals. Yet now, it was appearing from an individual of cosmos stage strength, which was truly incredible. Wang Ting didn't know what Tong Yen and the others were thinking. He continued his advance toward the main entrance of the Grand Hall. The battle conscious grew stronger and began to hover directly above him, almost making it difficult for him to raise his head. Battle! 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 It was as if Wang Ting was hearing faint cries and seeing hazy images in his mind. A figure in the midst of an epic battle. However, it was incredibly indistinct, and the individual's features could not be discerned. What is this? Is it the person who left this battle conscious? Wang Teng's expression shifted as he found it somewhat unbelievable. My primordial consciousness has reached the second rank. It's enough to frighten high-tier Imperial level star beasts, yet it can't compare to this battle conscious. The person who left behind this battle conscious. How formidable is he? An inexpressible sense of awe filled Wang Ting's heart. His eyes gleamed brightly as he remained focused on the main entrance of the Grand Hall. Chapter 2050 Unyielding Willpower, Dark Shadow Sword, Sword Spirit. 2. Just behind that door. He had a premonition that the entity emitting this battle conscious was right behind that door. This isn't enough. My primordial consciousness isn't enough. Wang Ting's eyes brightened, and he silently muttered to himself. The blank attribute points started to decrease, and his primordial consciousness rapidly advanced to the third tier. Boom! In an instant, something in Wang Ting's body shattered and a powerful aura erupted from his body. The primordial consciousness had reached the third rank. This aura was on par with a universe stage martial warrior. Primordial consciousness, 130,000, third rank, 20,000 blank attribute points disappeared. It was a considerable amount. Fortunately, Wang Ting had abundant blank attribute points, otherwise, it wouldn't have been enough. What is this? Tong Yen and the others were astounded. Wang Ting's presence had become stronger, and it wasn't a minor increase. It was a huge leap, as if he had jumped from heaven stage to the universe stage. At this moment, standing in front of them, Wang Ting seemed like a universe stage formidable warrior. His aura was so majestic that even they felt the pressure. They couldn't help but step back, unable to keep up with him. Warpath was unaware of how his aura had forced Tong Yen and the others to retreat. As his aura surged, he found that the terrifying battle conscious, though still fearsome, could no longer impede his progress. Tap, tap, tap. Step by step, his movements were unwavering and resolute. The aura could no longer shake his stride. In the next moment, he finally entered the interior of the Grand Hall. Beyond the door, the darkness gave way to a dimly lit space. Inside the Grand Hall, Wang Ting saw someone. It was a member of the Naga race. Standing in the very center of the Grand Hall, this Naga warrior held a dark sword in his hand and was adorned in battle-worn armor. Despite his body bearing numerous battle scars, he stood with unwavering pride. His gaze was locked upon the entrance, exuding an aura of disdain, as if he looked down upon all others. Wang Teng's pupils contracted slightly as if he had witnessed something unbelievable. Bang! At the next moment, an even more powerful battle conscious surged towards Wang Teng, much stronger than before. Wang Teng's complexion turned slightly pale as his third-rank primordial consciousness was unable to withstand it. The overwhelming battle conscious forced him to step back 3 times before he could stabilize himself. Fight! 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 The roars echoed in Wang Teng's mind, shaking his mental state to its core, almost rendering him unable to hold on. Such a terrifying battle conscious. Wang Teng's face slightly changed. And this was just a corpse. It had been dead for who knows how many years, no longer a living martial warrior, yet it still retained such a formidable battle conscious. This was unthinkable. Wang Ting couldn't help but wonder just how high was the cultivation level of this Naga race individual when he was alive. Wang Ting didn't even dare to imagine. So terrifying. This must be at least an eternal stage duke. Round Ball, who had been silent, spoke within Wang Ting's mind. Tong Yen and the others followed behind him. Though they struggled more, they were still heaven stage martial warriors and could withstand the battle conscious to some extent. However, upon entering the main hall and seeing the Naga race's corpse, the battle conscious surged, making it unbearable for them. These individuals were even more overwhelmed than Wang Ting, retreating more than 10 steps, ending up outside the door. Oh my God! Tong Yen and the others wore grim expressions, shocked that they couldn't even enter the hall. Only Wang Ting could enter. The overwhelming battle conscious they had just sensed was enough to keep them from entering. Even with their preparations, it seemed they wouldn't make it through the door. When they entered the hall, the queen felt a stronger call from her bloodline, but she was unable to enter the door, let alone use her bloodline power. She felt exasperated. Her expression changed, but there was nothing she could do. She could only stand at the door and wait. Wang Ting, on the other hand, glanced back at the group but didn't say much. He knew he couldn't blame others for not being able to enter the hall. He was about to raise his primordial consciousness to counteract the intense battle conscious, which was the only way for him to approach the corpse. However, his attention was suddenly drawn to the attribute bubbles next to the corpse. So many. There were many of them. Until now, all his attention had been absorbed by the Naga race's corpse, and only at this moment did he realize that the area surrounding the corpse was scattered with numerous attribute bubbles. Get them. With a glint in his eyes, Wang Ting immediately extended his spiritual power to pick them up. The attribute bubbles flew towards him one by one. Unyielding battle conscious, 4th rank, *400 unyielding battle conscious, 4th rank, *300 unyielding battle conscious, 4th rank, *600 unyielding battle conscious. Wang Ting's eyes lit up. He hadn't expected to find battle-conscious attributes here, which was a pleasant surprise. In an instant, an image appeared in his mind. A Naga race figure stood in the palace, his sword raised to the sky as he bellowed furiously. Fight! None can make me submit. I will fight to the end. The overwhelming battle-conscious surged into the sky, undaunted by death, unwavering as if even in the face of powerful enemies, there was no fear, only the will to fight. This indomitable spirit, that fearlessness, at this moment, transformed into a willpower piercing through the heavens like a sharp sword. Boom! In the sky, a colossal hand materialized, blocking out the sun as if the entire world was within its grasp. Then, it descended, unstoppable. The Naga warrior, however, displayed no fear. His eyes burned with unyielding battle conscious as he swung his sword. A peerless sword radiance swept out. After a thunderous explosion, the Naga warrior perished. His vitality dissipated, but that unwavering battle conscious remained, surrounding his body, never to disperse for thousands of years. Chapter 2051 Unyielding Willpower. Dark Shadow Sword. Sword Spirit. 3. Wang Ting regained his senses and sighed deeply. His eyes held an indelible sense of astonishment. He saw it. The demise of the Naga warrior. He also witnessed his unyielding battle conscious. In that moment, Wang Ting had achieved a profound understanding and insight into this type of battle intent, no longer merely acknowledging its power without comprehending its true essence. Wang Ting had now mastered this unyielding battle conscious. Unyielding battle conscious, 4550,000, 4th rank. What surprised Wang Ting even more was that the unyielding battle conscious had reached the 4th rank, which meant that he had comprehended it to the 4th rank all at once. Wang Ting felt like he had struck it big. The Naga race martial warrior's unyielding battle conscious was incredibly strong. Even the residual battle intent had reached the 4th rank, which was stronger than the primordial consciousness he had acquired by using his blank attributes. Wang Ting closed his eyes, immersed in the profound insight. This insight, from the first level to the fourth level, was naturally far beyond the ordinary. Even though Wang Ting had improved by picking up attributes, he still needed to deeply comprehend it. Suddenly, Wang Ting seemed to remember something. He had once obtained a type of battle conscious, the Leitang battle conscious. With thunder as his willpower, merging with Leitang battle conscious, he became the incarnation of the Lightning King, incredibly powerful. Leitang battle conscious, unyielding battle intent. These two types of battle conscious were not distinguishable in terms of strength. One was the grandeur and majesty of lightning, while the other was the indomitable fearlessness in the face of life and death. If you're not afraid of death, why should you fear lightning? There is no reason to. So, these two battle conscious were equal in strength. But Wang Ting thought of something more. What if he were to merge these two battle conscious? Would it become even more powerful? In the face of such a formidable opponent, anyone would feel powerless. Is the owner of that giant hand the master of the shadows? Wang Ting pondered, but no, if it were the master of the shadows, why would they leave shadow puppets to guard this place? But it seems that the Naga race doesn't possess such shadow abilities. Many questions swirled in Wang Ting's mind, leaving him puzzled. Never mind, it's been so many years. What's the point in dwelling on it? Wang Ting shook his head, dismissing further thoughts. His focus shifted to the corpse of the Naga race martial warrior. It was time to reap the rewards. First, it was the space equipment. Where was it? Wang Ting's gaze swept back and forth over the Naga race's corpse before finally settling on his wrist. That's it. He grinned and removed the space bracelet from the wrist. Without immediately inspecting it, he stowed it away. Then, his gaze shifted to the battle armor. Unfortunately, this suit of armor is completely ruined. Wang Ting shook his head, finding it regretful. It might be ruined, but the material seems exceptional. It can be melted down and reforged, Round Ball chimed in. Right, Wang Ting nodded. He was well aware of this and wouldn't let such an opportunity slip by. Wang Ting, look at the sword in its hand, it seems to be a Naga race treasure, the Dark Shadow Sword. Roundy's voice suddenly trembled with amazement. What sword? Wang Ting paused for a moment and asked in return. The Dark Shadow Sword. Round Ball gulped before responding. Dark Shadow Sword. Wang Ting mumbled to himself, sensing something strange in Round Ball's tone. He asked uncertainly, is this sword really impressive? Impressive? It's more than just impressive. Legend has it that the Naga race possesses a semi-divine weapon, and it's none other than the Dark Shadow Sword. Round Ball exclaimed with excitement. Wow. Wang Ting let out an expletive and joined in the excitement. A semi-divine weapon. Not quite divine, but it had some connection to divinity. Chapter 2052 Unyielding Willpower. Dark Shadow Sword. Sword Spirit. 4. Semi-divine meant it surpassed the eternal level and was on the verge of reaching the divine level of weapons. Divine-level weapons were incredibly rare in the entire universe, and semi-divine weapons were no less scarce. They were typically held by formidable individuals or powerful clans. To have one appear before him like this. Wang Ting could hardly believe it. With extreme caution, he reached out to touch the dark sword in the Naga race martial warrior's hand, as if afraid to damage it. His palm glided over the sword's surface as if caressing a peerless beauty. Suddenly, he sensed a familiar power within the dark sword. Shadow. This was the shadow power. A sharp glint appeared in Wang Ting's eyes. He was in disbelief. Dark shadow. Dark shadow. He muttered to himself for a moment and then asked, Round Ball, do the Naga race have any special talents? Initially, Wang Ting had assumed that the Naga race, being the ancestors of the snake men, should have the primordial oceanic serpent bloodline. Moreover, since this poison erosion world was dominated by the poison element, he thought the Naga race should have a strong affinity for poison-type attributes. But now, it seemed that might not be the case. Coincidentally, he possessed the shadow talent. This was prepared for him. Baby, we're fated. Wang Ting stared at the sword with a glint in his eye, eager to extract it from the Naga race martial warrior's grasp. However, Wang Ting's expression changed slightly. Surprisingly, he couldn't pull the sword out. The Naga clan's grip was incredibly tight, as if it were immovable. Do you have to do this? Come on, you've been dead for so many years. It's time to let go. Wang Ting felt a bit frustrated. Why was the Naga race martial warrior holding onto it so tightly, not leaving any chance for future generations? Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration and activated the shadow power within himself. Buzz! The dark shadow sword seemed to sense something and began to tremble violently. The Naga race's hand automatically loosened its grip. Wang Ting was about to take the sword, but he suddenly froze in place. The dark shadow sword had levitated on its own, and a shadow emerged from the blade, forming a shadowy serpent that coiled around the sword. It hissed and fixated its gaze on Wang Ting below. What is this? Wang Teng's expression was filled with astonishment as he watched this scene. Sword spirit. Wang Ting, this is a sword spirit. I can't believe that this semi-divine weapon has given birth to a complete sword spirit. Round Ball's voice rang out in shock. Chapter 2053 Snatching the Dark Shadow Sword. Bloodpool. 1. Round Ball's voice caused Wang Ting to regain his senses. Sword spirit. He knew what this was. As a Grandmaster blacksmith, it was impossible for him not to know what a sword spirit was. He had just been momentarily stunned by the appearance of the shadowy serpent and hadn't immediately recognized it. The so-called sword spirit was essentially one kind of artifact spirit. Artifact spirit was a general term for the spirits found in all types of weapons. A sword spirit was, in essence, the spirit of a sword. It was quite evident that the dark shadow sword before him had given birth to an artifact spirit. As Round Ball had said, this semi-divine weapon's artifact spirit was complete and possessed considerable intelligence, which was a rare occurrence. Generally, once a weapon reached the eternal level, it could give birth to a spirit. Eternal stage weapons could assimilate with eternal stage materials, coexist with the weapon, or even establish a mental connection with the wielder, and these spirits were called immortal artifact spirits. However, if a weapon advanced to the divine level, it had divine attributes, and the corresponding spirits were known as divine spirit. The question that lingered in Wang Ting's mind was the level of the shadowy serpent before him. Was it a semi-divine spirit or had it already reached the divine level? Wang Ting felt curious and excited. The dark shadow sword was truly exceptional, giving birth to an intelligent artifact spirit. Wow, it's the first time I've seen a weapon with an artifact spirit. Roundy couldn't help but appear beside Wang Ting, full of curiosity, inspecting the dark shadow sword spirit. Don't look like a good-for-nothing. You're embarrassing me, Wang Ting said with disdain. Come on, you're practically drooling over it yourself, Round Ball retorted with a roll of its eyes, showing obvious disdain. Am I? Wang Ting wiped the corner of his mouth, his face turning slightly red. All right, you're right. It seems like I've been had today, Wang Ting sighed in resignation. More shadow energy surged from his body, extending toward the shadowy serpent. The shadowy serpent devoured everything, and after a good half hour, all of Wang Ting's shadow power had been drained. At this point, the shadowy serpent seemed to have finally had its fill and even burped. Wang Ting couldn't help but sense a bit exasperated. This little thing certainly seemed to enjoy its meal. Little one, will you come home with me? I have delicious food here every day. If you don't come with me, you'll have to stay here. I'm about to leave, Wang Ting continued. He knew the creature understood him. The flashes of knowledge in its snake-like eyes couldn't be faked. The shadowy snake appeared to have understood and, without hesitation, began to control the dark shadow sword, flying slowly towards Wang Ting. Wang Ting shook his head. This little creature did it on purpose. It seemed like it had intended to go with him all along, but it decided to eat first before making its move. That's why it didn't even hesitate. Darn. He got tricked by this shadowy serpent. Wang Ting felt a bit annoyed but still showed a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. However, he remained calm and didn't take any impulsive action. The dark shadow sword slowly flew in front of Wang Ting. He smiled faintly and was about to reach out and grasp the hilt. Suddenly, the The dark shadow sword turned into a streak of light and shot directly into his body. The dark shadow sword's speed was astonishingly fast, and Wang Teng couldn't react in time. His expression changed slightly, and he immediately sensed the situation inside his body. Inside his inner cosmos, the dark shadow sword was floating, having made itself at home within him. The little snake was coiled around the dark shadow sword, casting a glimpse at Wang Teng, then disappeared into the depths of the dark shadow sword, seemingly quite at ease. It didn't consider Wang Teng an outsider. Wang Teng couldn't help but smile wryly. It looks like it has decided to go with you. Round Ball also seemed delighted, and it chuckled. Chapter 2054 Snatching the Dark Shadow Sword. Blood Pool. 2. It seems like it found itself a free place to stay, with food and drinks included, Wang Teng said, somewhat speechless. Ha ha, Round Ball chuckled and then burst into laughter. You can always let it come out if you're not willing. No worries, I can afford it. Wang Teng raised an eyebrow, feeling proud. This little one, only I can afford to take care of it. Conceited. Round Ball rolled its eyes and said, you're just showing off your good fortune. But there's one thing I should remind you of. The Dark Shadow Sword hasn't truly acknowledged you as its master yet. It's just taking shelter inside your body, Round Ball said with a serious expression. I know. I'm a Grandmaster Blacksmith, after all. Do you think I don't understand what it means to acknowledge a master? This semi-divine level weapon is a bit hard to deal with. I tried to coax it but all I managed to do was to make it come with me, Wang Teng said. Considering it's a semi-divine weapon, coaxing it to come with you is already quite an accomplishment. So, enjoy it while you can, Round Ball said. Wang Teng smiled faintly and didn't say much more. He had already gained the advantage, and the Dark Shadow Sword couldn't escape. It hadn't acknowledged him as its master yet, but once it tasted the benefits, he was confident that it would stay for good. Wang Teng was extremely confident. He looked at the corpse of the Naga race martial warrior and touched his chin. His eyes were shining. This corpse was also quite valuable. If it was turned into a shadow puppet, its power would undoubtedly be tremendous. Although he currently lacked the necessary materials to craft the corpse into a shadow puppet, there would be opportunities in the future. Round Ball had a somewhat peculiar expression. Wang Teng had been staring at a corpse for a long time, and its eyes seemed to be radiating a strange eagerness. Could he have some unusual fetish? Wang Teng had no idea what Round Ball was thinking, or he would have given it a good scolding. You and your fetishes. At this moment, he waved his hand and collected the Naga race martial warrior's corpse, causing the resolute battle conscious in the area to dissipate. Outside the door, Tong Yen and the others felt a change and breathed a sigh of relief. They immediately walked into the hall. In the center of the great hall, directly facing the entrance, a massive throne sat in silence. It was covered in a thick layer of dust, rendering it inconspicuous in the darkness. If not for Wang Teng's activation of the real eye, the throne might have gone unnoticed. Approaching the throne, Wang Teng examined it carefully. The design of the throne was strikingly similar to the thrones used by the snake men, adorned with various serpent-like patterns, and the armrests resembled coiled snakes. Wang Teng's eyes flickered with realization. He lightly twisted the armrests, and then quickly stepped back. Crack! A strange sound resonated through the chamber. The queen and her companions watched Wang Teng in amazement. How had he discovered this mechanism? Before long, the throne moved forward, revealing a dark hole beneath, leaving the onlookers wide-eyed in disbelief. Wow! If it weren't for Wang Teng, they might never have found this concealed entrance. It was hidden quite cleverly. Who would have thought that beneath the throne symbolizing the supreme authority of the snake men, lay a secret passage? Let's go down and take a look, Wang Teng said, a faint smile playing on his lips. Is it safe? Tong Yen asked. Just be careful, Wang Teng replied, and then he descended into the dark opening. Tong Yen and the others were speechless. While he said to be careful, he behaved as if he had no worries, adopting a rather casual attitude. They exchanged glances and followed suit. Wang Teng's earlier actions had earned their trust. If he believed there was no danger down there, they were likely safe. Chapter 2055 Snatching the Dark Shadow Sword. Blood Pool. 3. There were stone stairs beneath the hole. The group descended for a long time until they finally reached the bottom. Suddenly, a blood-red light emanated from the front. What a strong stench of blood! Yuan Bai and the others exclaimed in surprise. What could be in front of them? How could it give off such a strong scent of blood? The queen's face, initially carrying a faint aura of dignity and a hint of coldness, showed signs of excitement. She hurried forward as if something was drawing her in. Wang Teng remained calm. He had already guessed something, so he wasn't in a hurry. As they turned a corner, in the dim underground space, a pool of blood appeared before them. B0XO. Com Tong Yen and the others were utterly shocked. They hadn't expected to find such a place beneath the ground. I can feel it. My bloodline is boiling, murmured the queen with a glimmer in her eyes. This place should be the bloodline legacy ground of the Naga race, Wang Teng speculated. Even the primordial oceanic serpent bloodline within him was quivering. Desire. His bloodline power was yearning to absorb the bloodline power within this blood pool. Wang Ting fully activated the primordial oceanic serpent bloodline, and the sensation grew even stronger. It made him feel an urge to immediately enter the blood pool. It seems like this blood pool can enhance our physical strength, Yuan Bai commented with amazement as he reached out and placed his hand into the pool. He continued, I feel a slight tingling and burning sensation. Enhance our physical strength. Wang Ting thoughtfully nodded and said, it seems like it could benefit all of us. Rumors have it that the Naga race has strong physical bodies, and they can gather various star beasts' blood essences and absorb them in a unique manner. Could this blood pool be the place for such absorption? Round Ball had vanished as soon as they entered the hall but suddenly spoke in Wang Ting's mind. A place specifically for absorbing star beasts' blood essence to enhance physical strength. That's quite possible. Wang Ting nodded to himself. But this blood pool might not be as simple as just enhancing physical strength. Both he and the queen felt the pulsations of their bloodlines. While his primordial oceanic serpent bloodline was obtained through acquiring attribute bubbles and not inherently his own, it was his now. This mutual sensation of their bloodlines indicated that there might be something in the blood pool capable of truly awakening the bloodline power. For him and the queen, that was the real treasure. Wang Teng glanced at the queen, who appeared to be impatient and couldn't help but smile. He waved his hand. Everyone has a share. There's no need to be polite. The blood pool is quite large, and it should be sufficient for all of us to absorb its essence. They had all worked together to deal with the Naga race's armored corps, and so they should share in the benefits. Furthermore, he had taken most of the spoils from their earlier fights, so it was only fair to share this blood pool with the others. Despite his thick skin, he couldn't bring himself to be entirely selfish. All right, no need to hold back then. Tong Yen and the others nodded in agreement, clearly pleased. Gaining some enhancement to their physical strength in this place was a nice reward. They could all sense that the power within the blood pool would provide significant assistance to them. Junior Wang Ting, you're straightforward. I'm definitely making friends with you. Yuan Bai said with a hearty laugh. No need to be so polite, Wang Teng replied with a smile, feeling a bit awkward. These people were so easy to please. He felt even more embarrassed now. Wn Dong and the others exchanged glances, and Wang Teng didn't stop them from entering the blood pool. It seemed like this was also their opportunity. Afterward, everyone didn't speak much. They stored their battle armor and remained in their ordinary clothing, then stepped into the blood pool to soak up the essence of blood. Although they didn't feel much before, as soon as they entered the blood pool, they felt a burning sensation, like a searing pain, penetrating their skin, muscles, and bones, and spreading throughout their bodies. Everyone's expression changed slightly. Yuan Bai, is this the slight tingling and burning sensation you mentioned? Bai Yaro shouted. It was slight just now. Yuan Bai clenched his teeth. Damn. Qin Quan grunted and cursed, saying, it seems like the deeper we go, the more intense the burning and stinging sensations become. The group instinctively tried to use their force to resist the effects. Don't use force, Wang Teng said calmly. Tong Yen and the others were a little puzzled at first but quickly grasped the situation. The essence of blood's power was at work here. The more they resisted, the less effective it would be. Enhancing one's physical strength was not easy. It came at a cost. Clearly, the burning and stinging sensations were part of that cost. The group looked at Wang Ting's back and couldn't help but be surprised. Had this guy noticed this earlier? Also, Wang Ting appeared as if he were completely unaffected, his steps unwavering as he continued to advance deeper into the blood pool. He had moved ahead of them. Could his physical body be even stronger than theirs? Tong Yen and the others felt incredulous. Their competitive spirits were ignited, and they clenched their teeth, determined to keep up. On the other side, the queen also followed Wang Ting, heading deeper into the blood pool. She could sense that the further they went, the greater the benefits, so it remained to be seen if she could endure it. Chapter 2056 Snatching the Dark Shadow Sword. Blood Pool. 4. As they ventured deeper, the group noticed that a faint blood mist pervaded above the blood pool, obscuring their vision. They were having trouble discerning Wang Teng's figure. This guy, Tong Yen and the others were astounded. Not only can this blood pool activate my primordial oceanic serpent bloodline, but it can also enhance my ancient god's physique and true dragon battle physique. However, it's still not enough. Wang Ting activated his bloodline powers and both his physiques, fervently absorbing the blood essence from the pool. With him as the center, a vortex formed in the blood pool, stirring up the blood essence within it. The sensation of burning and stinging, for him, was like a gentle itch. It was far from painful. The blood pool appeared to be vast, with no visible end. Some distance away, the queen had stopped. She had traversed about 900 meters and had reached her limit. Tong Yen and the others reached different distances. Those with stronger physical bodies had covered around 800 meters, while those with weaker physical bodies had traveled 600 to 700 meters. After all, they were all heaven stage martial warriors and even the weaker ones didn't have frail physical bodies. However, there was one exception, Feng Mo. He had the weakest physical body and only managed to go around 300 meters, lagging far behind the rest. Was he so much weaker than Wang Ting? Feng Mo gritted his teeth, feeling a bit resentful. In ancient times, this blood pool had a standard. Every 300 meters was one standard. Feng Mo had reached the first standard, Tong Yen and the others were between the second and third standards, and the queen had reached the third standard. Wang Ting was walking the farthest distance. After they stopped, Tong Yen and the others sat cross-legged, looking at Wang Ting in the distance. His figure had become even more indistinct. They couldn't help but wonder how far he had gone. They initially believed that, even if Wang Ting's physical body was strong, it wouldn't surpass theirs by much. However, the reality seemed to indicate that Wang Ting's physical body was inhumanly strong. Taking a deep breath, they decided not to think about it too much. Dwelling on it further might be disheartening, so they closed their eyes and began absorbing the blood's essence from the pool. Wang Ting had walked about 1,600 meters, and he wasn't sure how close he was to the center of the pool, but the pool's depth was enough to submerge him. He decided to immerse himself completely, closing his eyes and allowing his body to be engulfed by the blood. With his flesh, he aimed to perceive the essence's pulsation from his bloodline. He also released his spiritual power. There should be attribute bubbles here. As expected, numerous blood-red attribute bubbles floated beneath the pool, and he picked them up directly. Blood essence power *100 blood essence power *120 blood essence power *150 primordial oceanic serpent bloodline *100 blood essence power *200 The attribute bubbles merged into Wang Ting's body one by one. Some transformed into blood essence power, coursing through his limbs and bones before ultimately integrating into his flesh. Others became a source of bloodline power, merging with Wang Teng's bloodline. Wang Teng felt an immediate and rapid enhancement in both his primordial oceanic serpent bloodline and his physical body. The blood essence power he absorbed from the attribute bubbles was incredibly pure and could be directly assimilated. This method was far more efficient and quicker compared to how ordinary warriors had to absorb and refine blood essence for their cultivation. If Wang Ting absorbed the blood essence power on his own, he would need to process and purify it before merging it into his physical body. In fact, it was quite fast. Wang Ting had activated his World Devourer divine technique, and his absorption and refinement speed were beyond comparison with ordinary warriors. In any case, with both methods of absorption working simultaneously, it was nothing but beneficial for Wang Ting. At the same time, Wang Ting absorbed the primordial oceanic serpent bloodline from the blood pool. This meant that the blood pool could stimulate the power of the Naga race's bloodline. The primordial oceanic serpent bloodline was extremely pure. Wang Ting's primordial oceanic serpent bloodline was already at the 4th stage, which made the difficulty of advancing it even higher than for the queen. However, the bloodline power in this pool could still directly enhance it. This indicated that the bloodline power within this pool had the potential to enhance bloodlines of any rank. It was the foundation of the Naga race, which explained why it was hidden so discreetly. With this pool, the Naga race could continuously produce a large number of bloodline warriors. It was, however, a bit scarce in some respects. Only one out of several attribute bubbles contained the primordial oceanic serpent bloodline. Wang Ting gazed forward, continuing to explore deeper into the pool under the control of his spiritual power. Chapter 2057 No Wonder. Sudden Enlightenment. 1. In the Blood Pool. Time passed slowly. 3 days later, Fang Mo woke up. His physical body had reached its saturation point and couldn't be further enhanced. If he continued to forcefully boost his strength, his body was likely to burst open with no other option. He stood up and left the blood pool. He gazed towards the deeper parts of the pool, where he could see several figures seated in meditation, with threads of blood essence power flowing towards them. Fang Mo's eyes flickered as he looked even further, where there was another person, someone he couldn't see. He walked so far, he couldn't even see his back. It was quite disheartening. Though they were peers, the differences in their progress were striking. 7 days later, several more people woke up, including Dong Lei, Gikdor, Wei Na, Wu Cheng, and many others. They walked out of the blood pool with regret. After all, they weren't known for their physical strength, so they had reached their limit. However, they examined their physical condition and were pleasantly surprised. Their physical strength had increased by at least 30%, making them stronger in terms of defense and power. Among the martial warriors at the same level, they were definitely stronger. They walked out of the blood pool with regret. After all, they weren't known for their physical strength, so they had reached their limit. On the 8th day, Cobb, Wn Dong, and Qin Quan woke up and emerged from the blood pool. They glanced at Dong Lei and the others. Ha ha ha, Wei Na and the others couldn't help but burst into laughter. They were genuinely surprised by Tong Yen, who had exceeded everyone's expectations. While Tong Yen was indeed a strong member of their team, they hadn't compared their strengths before, so they didn't know who was stronger. But now, Tong Yen's display of her physical strength was shocking them. This girl had been keeping a low profile, but she was so powerful. Over in the distance, Wn Dong and the others didn't look too pleased. They had been completely overshadowed by Yuan Bai and his team. Was the Snowchild team so outstanding? By the way, Junior Wang Ting hasn't come out yet? Yuan Bai looked around and asked. He's still inside. Wei Na, Qin Quan, and the others had complicated expressions. It was actually Wang Ting who truly surprised them. A Cosmos stage martial warrior lasted longer than Heaven stage martial warriors like them. When did the physical body of a Cosmos stage martial warrior become so powerful? They all shook their heads and turned their gazes toward the depths of the blood pool. They couldn't help but speculate how many days Wang Ting could last. In the midst of their waiting, 2 more days passed, and Tong Yen emerged from the blood pool. Her beautiful face was radiant, and with a hint of joy, she saw the others and cheerfully said, "Everyone is out. You lasted 12 days. Wei Na immediately hugged her by the neck, giving her a necklock, and exclaimed in amazement. Sister Wei Na, let me go, I'm about to suffocate. Tong Yen struggled a bit, stuck out her cute little tongue, and dropped her head, pretending to be lifeless. You little rascal. Wei Ena tapped her forehead, amused yet exasperated, and let her go. Hee hee. Tong Yen didn't mind and gave a mischievous smile. She wrapped her arm around Wei Na's and glanced at the others, but then froze. Is Wang Ting still not out? Nope. Everyone shook their heads, not surprised by her question. Almost everyone who came out would ask this question when they didn't see Wang Ting. Chapter 2058. No wonder. Sudden enlightenment. 2. Wang Ting was indeed the biggest surprise among them. He was just a Cosmos Stage martial warrior, but he overshadowed the Heaven Stage martial warriors. Far away, Feng Mo felt a bit bitter. He was also a Cosmos Stage martial warrior, but why was he overlooked by the Heaven Stage martial warriors while Wang Ting was so highly regarded? It was frustrating and seemed unjust. He felt like encountering Wang Ting was a mistake. He was receiving huge blows to his confidence all the time and had almost lost all his motivation. Has really something, Tong Yen marveled and gazed towards the depths of the blood pool. Now that you mention it, that snake woman hasn't come out either, Wei Ena suddenly remarked. Right. Tong Yen realized and nodded, but she's at the peak of the Heaven Stage, plus she's a snake woman, so there must be some connection between her and the Naga race. Didn't she discover this blood pool with Wang Ting? This blood pool might have some special meaning to her, Wei Ena pondered and said. The snake men, the Naga race. The snake men in this poison erosion world might have some Naga race bloodline, Bai Yarrow suggested. Do you think that snake woman will experience atavism? Tong Yen asked. Atavism? It might not be that easy, Wei Ena replied. It's hard to say. If atavism was that easy, these snake men would have already returned to their original state. The stellar academies would gladly accept them, Bai Yarrow explained. Her fate depends on her luck. She's fortunate to have met Wang Ting. Otherwise, she wouldn't even have a chance to enter the blood pool, Tong Yen chuckled. As they were talking, a loud rumble suddenly emanated from the blood pool. Everyone was taken aback and quickly looked towards the depths of the blood pool. In the midst of the blood mist, a terrifying giant python phantom suddenly rose, coiling above the blood pool and letting out a hissing sound. That's, Tong Yen and the others were utterly shocked. Is that the primordial form? Yuan Bai swallowed his saliva. That Wang Ting definitely had impure intentions. They couldn't believe he didn't have any ulterior motives toward this seductive snake lady. And considering her identity as a queen of her people, WTF. This realization only fueled their excitement further. The queen of the snake men race. What could be more fulfilling than capturing the heart of a queen? If Wang Ting knew their thoughts, he would probably spit in their faces in disgust. These thoughts were baseless accusations. He was not that kind of person. In midair, the giant python illusion lasted for a while before slowly dissipating. The queen landed gracefully, her serpentine tail swaying gently in the blood pool, and in the blink of an eye, she was on the shore. Sister, did you awaken your bloodline power? Tong Yen immediately approached and asked in a fawning tone. Everyone, did she fall in love with his snake lady? The queen was momentarily surprised. She hadn't exchanged a single word with these extraterrestrial humans before, and now someone was striking up a conversation with her, which felt strange. However, considering that these people seemed to be friends of Wang Ting, she nodded and replied, yes. Did you experience atavism? Sister, what's the relationship between the snake race and the Naga race? Tong Yen continued asking. I think so. The Naga race, according to Wang Ting's explanation, we should have some Naga bloodlines, or else we wouldn't be able to awaken the bloodline power using this blood pool, the queen responded thoughtfully. So it's really atavism. Sister, you're one of the few Naga race remaining in this world. You now have the qualifications to leave this world with us, Tong Yen exclaimed with excitement. Leave this world. The queen was taken aback. This was her lifelong pursuit, and now it appeared right in front of her. It was all because she had awakened the Naga bloodline. While she was pleasantly surprised to awaken the bloodline power, she had never considered that having the bloodline would allow her to leave this world. Her constant belief was that by becoming strong enough, she could defeat the extraterrestrial humans and leave this world. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.